This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. We have a packed show. We got going a couple minutes late because we were just keeping tabs on the big announcements coming out of the CFL head office, which we will get to in just a minute. We're also going to be talking draft. CFL draft goes tonight. And, of course, we're all looking forward to the NHL draft lottery next Thursday on May the 5th. We'll talk about what is at stake in the lottery and some of the top prospects with Chris Peters. Murat Atesh will join us a little bit later on. And while we go into a new era of CFL football with some of the changes that have been announced, both rules-wise as well as what has just been announced with the schedule and the playoff format, which we'll get to in a minute, Adam Bighill leaves an incredible legacy in Winnipeg. He announced his retirement last week as a Winnipeg Blue Bomber. He will join us on the program. And we'll also connect with the head coach and captain of the Niverville Nighthawks, MJHL champions, on their big championship, the first ever for the Niverville franchise, and a trip next week to the Centennial Cup for the Canadian National Championship. Great to have everybody with us. Shout out to you podcast listeners, and welcome to everybody watching with us live on YouTube. Hit that thumbs up button and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. We got to get to all this breaking news, so let me just first give a quick thanks to all the sponsors that make WST happen each and every day. Of course, our partners at CoolBet Canada, Princess Auto, Chud's Power Sports, Clean Line Plumbing, Heating, and Electrical, as well as the Manitoba Building Trades and Manitoba Federation of Labor, Uptown Alley, Rowley's Transfer, St. Vital Dental Center, the Tri-Hospital Lottery. Tickets on sale now. Get them at trihospitaldream.com. Manitoba Battery, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, Breezy Bend, Royal Sports, Boston Pizza, Little Brown Jug, and we will get to a why not question of the day for Not Autocorp over at Waverly and McGillivray. Michael Remis, what's going on?
What's going on is you just got this breaking news of some format changes to the CFL schedule and playoffs, but also trying to keep track of the NHL playoffs. You know, who's in, who's out. McDavid, game time decision tonight for Edmonton as they're trying to stay alive in the playoffs. So we got playoffs, but also, you know, the CFL around the corner, Gold Eyes, training camp starts up on Friday, and the Sea Bears too. So we're kind of on the cusp of all the summer sports beginning.
Yeah, now, I mean, listen, great night of hockey last night. The Penguins avoid elimination. The Vegas Golden Knights come back and avoid going down 3-1 in their series. Some big games tonight. And yeah, you just mentioned Connor McDavid. You know, we'll talk playoffs with Murat coming up in a bit. I just finished the lock shop in Edmonton on EST. And I can tell you that there are a lot of nerves in Northern Alberta tonight as the Oilers go into game number 5 at home against the Anaheim Ducks. But let's just get to this. You know, it was funny. I did not even know that there was any sort of an announcement coming. This is draft day. We were kind of looking at, a bunch of the top prospects and who was going to be available for the Bombers, picking at 4. And then we got news in the last hour that there was going to be a couple of major announcements that were made by the Canadian Football League. And Remis, let's get right to them. First off, and this has been something that I have supported for a long time. It is finally happening. We're moving the season up. The shift of the Canadian Football League season to begin on an iconic Canadian holiday and the unofficial start of summer. The CFL season next year will open on May long weekend. And it's interesting, Remo. Part of this is a strategy, and I think a lot of this comes off of the incredibly successful tradition of Labor Day weekend, that they're looking to create tentpole events for each summer-long weekend. Victoria Day weekend will clearly be the start of the season, so opening week. Saint Jean-Baptiste Day in June in Quebec. Canada Day weekend in July. The August long weekend in August. And then, of course, Labor Day weekend and Thanksgiving weekend. They're looking to establish long weekend signature events at stadium, as well as appointment viewing for those at home or the cottage. Certainly, and I've said this for a long time, given, like, say it's 8 or 9 degrees like it is right now, feels warmer in May than it does in late October. And I think the excitement of the start of the season, as well as, the fact that it's spring and, getting night, I think that's going to really help them. Early, not as much early on, but hopefully later on in the season. They say better conditions for on-field performance, more warm weather for fans in attendance to improve the fan experience. I mean, I think I agree with on that. The Grey Cup in Saskatchewan will be played on November 7th this year, Reem. The earliest Grey Cup ever. To put it into perspective, 5 years ago, that Grey Cup was on November 20th. So they basically moved it a full 2 weeks earlier from what we've had traditionally over the course of the year. And that is just the start. But, why not question of the day for Not AutoCorp? People in the chat interested in your immediate reaction, moving the CFL schedule up, starting on May long weekend. And before we get to the change in the playoff format, which I was not expecting, let us know what you think on that. Remo, what are your first reactions to moving the schedule up to May long weekend?
Yeah, I think it's great. I like what they're doing, the idea of marketing around the long weekends. You see NFL do this now, having signature games. You got the Thanksgiving game, Christmas game, opening weekend, and starting, the opening May long. It's earlier. You're not going to have these late cold weather games. You can still have cold weather for a Grey Cup in November, but it's not going to be freezing. I thought this past Grey Cup wasn't the coldest, but it was lukewarm compared to what other division finals that we've been to in Winnipeg. So we've been talking about this for a while, starting the season earlier. We couldn't figure out why they would. Maybe it was, didn't want to conflict with the Stanley Cup playoffs. I don't know why they would be concerned about that, but I think that, starting the season earlier is great. We get sooner, to the football. And also, you're not going to have some crazy cold weather games for the championship, the most important games, Huss.
I mean, even the playoffs, like, people will suck it up and go out for playoff games. But, I mean, let's face it. Think about that last game of the regular season, which has been played for years, like in and around Halloween. So often, the final week of the regular season, you pretty much know where things are at when it comes to the playoffs. Often guys are getting rested, and then you've got a game that sort of doesn't mean a whole lot. And on top of it, it might be played at 3 or 4 degrees outside, which, really, really does hurt attendance. I mean, moving that up, the scenarios or the situation around the game probably won't change a whole lot. But I guarantee you, moving that thing up a couple weeks probably guarantees, or in most cases, will give you better weather, which probably puts a few more asses in seats. And the other side of things is, Reem, we get to this point in April and then into May, people are ready to get outside and do things. And like I said for a long time, I thought it was nuts that they were starting the season around Canada Day long weekend, like at least get us into June. It's been a big time success. The logical conclusion of this was to take it from the July long weekend right up to the May long weekend, give fans better weather in most environments, in most CFL cities for the games, and kick things off on the long weekend. Why the heck not? I love this. I think it's long overdue, but these were some of the changes that they talked about doing. And I know the rule changes were somewhat controversial to many. This one, I don't think is going to be very controversial at all.
Yes, I agree 100%. You talk about warmer weather. I mean, it's like 8 degrees, but I'm at the park. A lot of kids, a lot of families finally saying, hey, let's get outside. Winter is over. You know, we're showing our faces like the groundhog on Groundhog Day for an extended period of time. And as you mentioned, there were some games late in the season last year where, you know, it's not great. People are opting out. You want people to go to the stadiums. So this is a very welcome move. And I just did a binary poll. What do you think of the season starting earlier? Love it or hate it? I didn't do a meh option. 96% love it if I had to choose among 50 votes. So very positive in the chat.
Stuart Johnson will be happy. The support for this rule change as opposed to maybe a few of the other ones that they rolled out last year. So here's the schedule now. The CFL Invitational Combine is going to happen on the 26th of February. This is for next year. The CFL Combine will be the week of March 15th. The CFL Canadian Draft, which is going tonight, moves up 2 weeks. Everything basically moves up 2 weeks. The CFL Canadian Draft will be early April, April 13th. The Global Draft will be April 14th. Rookie camp opens on the 21st. Training camp opens on the 24th. So right now, end of April next year, training camp will be fully underway. We'll be getting ready for the preseason and then to start the season on May long weekend. Now, Remo, the other big part of today's announcement is a full revamping of the CFL playoffs. And this is a very innovative but a pretty significant change. Like, I thought that maybe they'd just go, hey, we're changing the playoffs and we're going 1-6. This is not the case now. You might want to go to the CFL and if you can bring this up for people, because the playoffs now have an extra round. The round 1 of the CFL playoffs will include 4 games. There will be a West Division showdown between the number 1 and number 2 teams in the West. There'll be an East Division showdown between the number 1 and 2 teams in the East. Very similar, very Canadian, I will say, to curling and the Page playoff system, where you have the top 2 teams through the regular season or in the round robin advance, and the team that wins moves on to the final. In this case, the winners of the 1-2 game in both the East and the West will move to the Grey Cup semifinals. There will also be 2 play-in games. Now, the teams will be seeded by record. 8 teams will be participating in the first week. So only the 9th team will be eliminated from the regular season. You will also have the 5 seed play the 8 seed and the 6 seed play the 7 seed. Those teams that win that matchup will move on to round 2, which they're referring to as the elimination game. If you lose the 1-2 game, you will play the winner of a play-in game in round number 2. Win that game, you move on to the semifinal. So it is possible, I would in fact say likely, that you might see the 1 and 2 teams in the West and the 1 and 2 teams in the East play in that first week and then in the third week of the playoffs as well. It certainly, I think, does reward teams that finish in the top 2 with, I guess, an out. You will have to win 2 games to get to the Grey Cup, as opposed to winning the division and having just 1 home game moving forward. So there's a little bit more playoff football. I'm not sure whether we'll have the traditional Western and Eastern finals because things are reseeded. And I would also say, Remo, I think we'll have the chance to get the best 2 teams in the Grey Cup, albeit with a little bit more playoff football. This is one that I'm kind of wrapping my head around. But it certainly is interesting, and it is very different. This is not something I'd considered for the CFL before.
And Stuart Johnson at that press conference where he announced the new rules, I think he said he didn't like that you could get to the Grey Cup with only one win. I know I look at this. It took me a second to wrap my head around and figure out what is going on here. There's a lot to take in. So they get extra playoff games. So the league probably likes that more, TV, more revenue. I feel like this I never had a problem with needing to win one game. I thought it made the regular season mean something. It made the division mean something. I never thought it was a problem that, okay, you won. It's an 8-team league. This isn't a 32 9-team league. This doesn't have a lot of teams, so you're working with what you have. So I didn't think of that as a problem. I mean, this is what it is going to be now. I can't say I'm a huge fan. I feel like it cheapens the regular season. Winning the division, I don't think it's as important. You get a home game, I guess, for the division title where you can advance to the semifinal. I don't know. And then every team gets in the playoffs except for that one sad sack team that we're going to dump on when they don't make it.
Well, yeah, for sure. Like being the 9th team and not even part of it, that will be a very dubious distinction.
I guess will they have expansion to a 10th team? Then you'd be like, okay, sure, maybe. I don't think they're fixing a problem that needed to be solved here. I like moving the schedule up. I don't know if anyone was saying, oh, it's lame. That maybe a couple of people are saying, win one game in the championship, but that's part of the winning the division. That's why you have a regular season. I feel like this diminishes the regular season, but it does remind me of what baseball did, increasing the wild card numbers. But I don't know where you land or where the chat lands on this.
I mean, I'm sort of in the middle. And again, we've just found this out in the last 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I'll maybe hear some arguments or pros and cons on both sides. I do think that it does take away from winning your division. I guess by definition, I'm assuming that the number one team would have that game at home. And then you would have a bye the next week, and then presumably would be at home in the East or in the Grey Cup semifinal, as it were. Does it specify what would happen if you are the number 2 team by the regular season and you win the first round, the showdown? So you move on to the semifinal game. Does that winner get the home game?
This just came out, so we're reacting to this in real time. I do think that one of the benefits of this is if you have a stacked division, maybe you're going to see different playoff matchups and divisions aren't going to matter as much. I'd have to see how it would play out with how would this have looked, this past season or in a season past? I don't know. I guess they want to expand the season, get more games. I don't know. I'm not crazy about this, but I need to see more. So I put out a poll, Huss. What do you think of it? Love it, hate it, need to see more. 50% right now, need to see more. And the other, it's pretty split after that.
Excellent. So after each round, teams are reseeded. So you will maintain matchups that reward teams based on the regular season. The division showdown losers host an elimination games and the winners. So here, this is interesting. If you're the number 2 team and you go on the road to play the number 1 team and you win that game, you get the bye and you will play the semifinal game at home.
Yeah.
So that is significant. So really it's now you got to be in the top 2 and you prefer to be number 1. So you have that game at home to have the semifinal game at home. And just to give you an idea about how this playoff format's going to look in 2027, the division showdowns and the play-in games will be October 15, 16. The 2 elimination games will be October 23rd. The Grey Cup semifinals will be October 30th. And then the Grey Cup. is on the 7th of November. So big news in the Canadian Football League, and we didn't even get to the draft tonight, which the Bombers are on the clock at number 4. Very interesting top players available in it, including a young Manitoban who just finished up his time at Purdue after starring at the U of M, who could potentially find his way back home. We'll touch on that before the end of the program, but pay attention tonight to the CFL draft. But give us your thoughts, and if you are listening on the podcast, feel free to fire us a message on Instagram, on X, on Facebook, with your thoughts on these moves today. CFL season moving up to May-long weekend starting next year. Grey Cup moving up a couple weeks, and a big shakeup to the CFL playoffs. As I said, we'll spend more time talking hockey, both playoffs and more with Murat Atesh. But we got to talk some draft coming up because, of course, we are counting down to the 5th of May for the draft lottery. What is at stake for teams like the Winnipeg Jets? We will find out coming up in just a minute as Chris Peters joins us to get ready for the NHL draft and the draft lottery coming up on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
Hey, Bob, you hearing the news?
I can't listen to the news, Daryl.
This is different.
Oh, it's so negative.
Not this time. Manitoba's got these new jobs agreements. And when the government builds things like new schools and hospitals, they'll hire Manitoba workers first.
Really?
Creating good jobs with union standards and more apprenticeships for Manitobans. And we'll get rid of those out-of-province license plates on job sites.
Keeping our money working for Manitobans, eh?
You betcha.
Well, that's how it should work.
I knew you'd like it.
A message from Manitoba's Building Trades and Federation of Labor.
Spring into good times at Uptown Alley and eat, drink, and play at the most fun spot in the city. You'll enjoy 5-pin bowling, 10-pin bowling, a state-of-the-art arcade, and good times playing laser tag as well. And in addition, Uptown Alley features incredible food and drink options at their bistro. Pop down to Uptown Alley with your group or make it a party. It's the best place in Winnipeg for birthday parties for kids, teens, or adults, and an amazing spot for corporate events where you just simply pick your activities, any of your add-ons, what you'd like to eat, and the Uptown Alley staff takes care of everything else. For more information, go to uptownalley.ca, book a lane at 488-0000, or pop down and see him at 1301 St. Matthews Avenue. Got a move coming up? Lean on our friends and longtime sponsors at Rolly's Transfer, the most trusted name in moving and storage in Manitoba. Now into their 7th decade with over 60 years of experience, family owned and operated. Head over to their website at rollys.com to find out all about their services serving Winnipeg and southern Manitoba. In the top right corner, you can click on Request an Estimate. Use the promo code WST for a special discount on moving services and moving supplies, and then simply let them know when you're moving, where you're moving to, and what needs to be moved, and the friendly staff at Rolly's will turn it around quickly and get you a great quote to get you locked in for the white glove treatment that they've been famous for now for over 60 years in Winnipeg. For all your moving needs, make it Rolly's Transfer, the most trusted name in the game. Find out more and request an estimate today on your next move at rollys.com. Has it been a minute since you've been to the dentist? If it is, our pal Harry and the wonderful staff at St. Vital Dental Center would love to see you. They've been taking care of generations of Winnipeggers and Manitobans in St. Vital for years, and have now moved into a beautiful new facility at 167 St. Anne's with state-of-the-art equipment and convenient free parking right behind the building. They'll handle customers and clients from 6 months to 99 plus with a full array of dental services, from cleanings and checkups to surgeries like dental implants. Dr. Terry and the gang can absolutely do it all. We'll do it with a smile on their face and make your smile look even better than it's ever been. Go to stvitaldental.ca online to make an appointment. Pop into St. Vital Dental, get that girl taken care of, and tell them the boys at Winnipeg Sports Talk sent you. All right, let's talk a little NHL draft. Chris Peters about to join us. Don't forget, everyone, Truck Month is on now at GMC. If you want something reliable, tough, and ready for whatever the schedule throws at you, that's the 2026 Sierra 1500 Pro Graphite Crew Cab in a nutshell. It can be yours today, and you get a $6,000 cash purchase credit with a factory 2-inch lift, off-road suspension, and a 5.3-liter V8. This is one ready for anything truck. Don't miss out. Get to your local GMC dealer and take advantage of Truck Month before it ends. Let's welcome in our guy Chris Peters from Flow Hockey. Chris, what's going on? How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. It's good to be back and good to be talking some hockey. I know it's probably not the kind of hockey Winnipeg fans want to talk about at this moment, but at the same time, there's some excitement at least that you get a little bit of some sort of benefit for not having a great season.
Well, I love that. I love having you on right now because, of course, we're going to talk NHL draft and the draft lottery and whatnot. But I know your work at Flow Hockey. You're all over the American Hockey League as well. How about our Moose? Tough first one coming off the mat, putting Dom DiVincentis in 2 big wins, giving up only 1 goal. And the Moose now have the tall task of going up against the standard in the American Hockey League this year, the Grand Rapids Griffins.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, I think it was a really impressive couple of games there. I mean, that was an intense series with Milwaukee. These best of 3 series, it's like, hey, you have an off night, all of a sudden your season's on the brink, and you gotta bounce back. And I think what we saw from this Manitoba team is something that we've seen kind of all year. It's a group that wins with depth. It's a group that has, when they get the goaltending, they're as tough as anybody to play against. And they're a really solid defensive team. There's a lot of things that, that they got a good veteran decor, which I think helps. And then you bring in some guys like Salamonson and, you have some guys that you get back from the NHL because your team's out. That really helps. But I can't say enough about the play of Dom DiVincentis and the way that he has kind of held things together here in the postseason. I think both he and Thomas Milic at various stretches of the season, you see flashes of brilliance from both of them. So now you've got a chance to go in and Grand Rapids, they are the top seed in the Western Conference. They're the team that is really they were on a history making path for a long time. They kind of fell off a little bit towards the end of the season, opened the door for Providence, ended up winning the regular season championship. But I think Grand Rapids, they've got great goaltending. They've got a good veteran team. And then they also got a significant amount of help from the Red Wings, guys like Axel Sandin Pellikka down. Not helpful for Manitoba, but I think, you have the benefit of coming in hot a little bit after those 2 big wins at home.
Chris, and it'll be a long time off for the Griffins. I mean, before they come to Manitoba. And again, for folks that maybe don't know this is a best of 5 series with the first 2 games in the lower seeded team. So 2 p.m. Saturday, 2 p.m. Sunday, games 1 and 2. And you just wonder, I mean, if the Moose can kind of carry that momentum from their last series and maybe catch a team that hasn't played for a while, they could give themselves a pretty good opportunity heading out to Grand Rapids. But certainly a tall task to play a team that has been as good as they've been all year. Just while we're talking about the Moose, interested in your perspective in that, I mean, the Jets for the last couple of years were the Jennings Trophy winners, and a defensive identity was what got them there. Most NHL teams, certainly Winnipeg, try to replicate that style of hockey with their American League team, which they did quite well. I mean, very stingy, as you mentioned, when the goaltending went. They just won about 1 million games, 2-1. And I think that gives some people pause when it comes to the development side of Winnipeg and getting the Barlows and the Jaegers and the Lamberts ready for the National Hockey League. How would you describe what's happened in Winnipeg, where those players are, and are they benefiting for being ready to actually play well in the National Hockey League, even if the numbers maybe aren't as gaudy as some other teams?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of factors at play there. I mean, really, the Central Division is a tough division. You've got, Chicago Wolves, you've got Texas Stars, you've got Grand Rapids, you've got Milwaukee, and those are teams that have, traditionally been very strong. Rockford and Iowa didn't make the playoffs this year, but they can give you a tough game as well. And so, I think that that's part of it. I think it's really difficult for young guys to come into the AHL and produce at a high level. But I would say that, there are probably some elements to this team that aren't exactly offense friendly. A lot of their veteran players, with the exception of like Samuel Fagemo, who's had a tremendous scoring career in the AHL. They don't necessarily have those guys that are going to be those high level producers. And you think about, there's a lot of teams that really need those veteran players in the AHL. And I think sometimes people look at those guys and they say, well, they're taking opportunity and time away from the younger players. But I think those guys are actually some of the most critical pieces in an organization, because those are the guys that are shepherding those young players and finishing the plays. And I don't know that necessarily Manitoba had the best. And I think, if you're the Moose, you're having some of the same problems in attracting those free agents and other guys to come that are veteran players. And to play, be the second team in the city. Like, that's a tough kind of different environment that you have to deal with. What I'll say about the young guys, though, and I think this is true, like Brad Lambert obviously was struggling trying to get up to the big club for a long time. But you could still see that he was putting in the work. He was putting in the paces. He was getting through all that stuff. Same thing with Braden Yeager this year. And I think Colby Barlow has actually shown great strides this season in terms of his play. The league is very difficult and it takes some time to adjust. I don't think those guys are really any further behind or anything because of the AHL situation. I think that they're more just like, it's part of the natural progression. I think each of those guys has their own things that have gotten in their way in terms of a rapid trajectory to the NHL club. But at the same time, I think like Manitoba seems very well set up in terms of, the development situation, the fact they play in such a difficult conference, or difficult division. All those things are good for development, which is what I think we've seen with those guys. And, maybe the numbers don't show it all the time.
Now, we haven't seen them in the playoffs as of yet. That could potentially change. There are so many players that are with the Moose right now that just getting in the lineup is a challenge. But just give us a quick idea of what you saw from Kieran Walton and Kevin He this year as they sort of look to make the transition to pro hockey, and where they would set up as, potential NHLers in the future, despite being drafted a little later than many others.
Yeah, I think that Kieran Walton has been a very fascinating prospect to track over the last couple of years, given the high level of scoring and relative to where he was in the draft. I think this was a very strong year for him in terms of getting opportunities. He gets traded from Sudbury, gets to go to Peterborough, and I thought he had a really strong showing there in this season, especially, and that was a good team. They didn't last real long in the playoffs, but again, he has another strong, productive season. He's got some size to him. I think he still is going to need to work on some of the different things of just completing his game and becoming even more difficult to play against. And so you've got him, and then you've also got Kevin He. And you look at the numbers for both those players, and they're gaudy. They're really big numbers. And I think what I saw from Kevin He this year was a very strong progression, not just to being a highly skilled player, but adding more of that competitive element to his game, continuing to be a driver. And that's what we saw when he goes from Niagara to Flint. Flint was a wagon this year, but he was a driver on that team. He was a guy that made that team better. And so both of them, I think, have improved their pro standing since they were drafted. And these guys actually both feel kind of like that. I always thought Kevin He seemed like against type for Winnipeg to draft, like, because seemed like he was just all skill and just all scoring, and there wasn't much away from the puck. So I think he's really started to develop more elements of his game and looks a little bit more like that. I thought Kieran Walton looked kind of like that guy. You take that later round stab on a player that's showing some upside. He's got enough tools. He's got the physical stuff that you can kind of work with, and he's really progressing. So I think the good news is that, the Jets have had some tough luck in terms of the draft situation. You look at what happened with McGroarty, you look at what happened with Lucius, which was completely out of everybody's hands. And you have a little bit of bad luck. Guys like, Walton and He at least look like they're giving themselves a chance to make the big club down the line and have shown significant improvement from their draft year.
Chris, before we get to this year's draft, we're all watching the playoffs, and I can't stop talking about Brandon Hagel in relation to the draft, because he's such an interesting player. I mean, the guy's a star right now. He's playing for Canada at the Olympic Games. He's a go-to guy for John Cooper. He's got 6 goals. This was a guy that was drafted in the 6th round and then wasn't even signed by the team that picked him. and ended up going to the American League and on a two-way deal with Chicago and working his way up, and the rest is history. Looking back, why did so many teams pass so many times on Brandon Hagel? And is the element of the things that make him a great player, is that the toughest thing to scout in 18-year-olds, to project that ability to fight and compete at beyond what most NHLers bring to the table every night?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're looking to draft a Brandon Hagel type, it's really hard. Like, I just don't know that you can say, oh, well, this guy is gonna be that, because Brandon Hagel, if maybe not, like he might be one of those guys where the path created him, where he was basically, all right, so I was good enough to get drafted. I'm not the best at any one thing. I'm competitive enough, and teams are seeing that. I'm producing at a reasonable enough clip. Like, he was a guy that, was a good, moderately productive player in the WHL, who then exploded into an exceptionally productive player in the WHL. And, you don't always see that. And you can't really predict that, because development is not a straight line. I think, though, because he had to prove himself, because he had to have a chip on his shoulder, because he had to fight, because he had to, do all those things, that is what created what we're seeing today. And that is difficult to replicate. I don't even think you could put a player in a developmental situation that is going to create that type of player, because I think some of the adversity is what created Brandon Hagel. And to think back to, like, even when Chicago traded him for, first round picks, and you're like, I think it was multiple first round picks.
Yeah, two first rounders.
Yeah, I was like, really, for even then, really, for Brandon Hagel, two seems like a lot. And now he's, a star, a Canadian Olympian, like all these different things that he's brought to the table. And what do you look for? I think every single player, there's a lot of guys that are going to have skill. You got to find those guys that have that innate compete level, and that's something that should show up on the ice. And I think that was always the case with Brandon Hagel. There was always that, but was the offense going to be there? Was he going to take those next steps? And so I think, you're looking for that compete level. You got to kind of find a guy that's in that, he's big, but not too big, not too small. He's like just right, basically, Brandon Hagel. And then you have, just basically have to watch the development as it happens, and hope that, that's right. But I think predicting what he would have been then to what he is now, it just proves that development is not a straight line, and it does not go linearly for anybody.
Is that, I mean, the players nowadays are so skilled. I mean, almost to a man at these levels. Is the most rare thing, or what scouts and eventually NHL GMs are trying to unearth, is that level of compete and toughness, and is that the hardest thing to maybe judge in these junior players at 18 as to how they'll be able to hack it later on? Because, I mean, we all go to and we do these exercises of redrafting. Where would Matthew Tkachuk be again? I mean, Hagel's the kind of a unicorn in the spot, but the good teams right now, these teams play with a level of edge that a guy like that has more than anything, that honestly you don't see a lot, or certainly as much in junior hockey, at least anymore. I don't watch a lot of the U.S. stuff, but I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think it's a really good point, because the thing is that everybody has a skill coach, everybody has a skating coach, everybody has, a mental performance coach, like all these different things. And I mean, some do, not every player has those benefits. Not everybody has the privilege of the level of finances it takes to do that.
A lot of them now do, though.
A lot do. And that's the thing. And that's kind of one of the tough parts about, getting to the upper levels, is sometimes it matters how much money you have, which, is a whole other story. And I'm always fascinated by the kids that did have all that money, that do find the way to be those highly competitive players, because they had a lot that was given to them. But I think that, we do see it, and I think that it may not be as rare as you would expect, but I think that it's something that they don't spend enough time focusing on at younger ages, of, battling through adversity and other things. And I'm not talking about like 8U or 10U hockey. Or, squirts and peewees or whatever. It's more like as they get into those upper echelon of the U14s, then the U16s and all those different higher levels, it's, creating an environment where they have to compete, creating an environment where their practices are physical and competitive. And then also just having those things and that has to kind of come out. And I think work ethic is also something that is going to have to be kind of taught from a young age just by your parents. It's how you're raised. It's like the different things that you have to do. Was everything handed to you or did you have to earn things? And I think that that's kind of what can be lost in some of these decisions that, hey, we got to get the skill. We got to get the right skill coach, the right skating coach. I was like, okay. And that takes a lot of work ethic to put in that time. But where does, what in terms of like, are you going to be physical enough? Are you going to dig for that puck? Are you going to know how to use your body in a board battle? Are you going to know how to use your body in open ice? I mean, those are the things that I think matter. And so the players that focus on that and that take pride in that have a chance. They have a better chance than their peers because that is something that still matters and can win you a job. Everybody wants to be a top 6 player, but there aren't that many top 6 jobs to go around. You've got to find a way. And I think the players like Brandon Hagel didn't go into this thinking he was going to be a top 6 player. I don't think.
No, he was hoping to be on a team.
He just became one. And like that dog on bone mentality is really what I think is why I said, like, I think the path created him because he had to fight for it.
And speaking of fighting, I mean, there is, and not as much in the playoffs, but man, I mean, we saw a lot of it in the final kind of 20, 25 games as things got ramped up. And I mean, I guess there's also the element of, not really knowing what happens when a guy gets punched in the face at some point, because it will happen when you get to
Right.
the NHL level. And the guys that react better to that are the ones that, frankly, are the ones that can often dominate playoff series. And it is fascinating. But I think about this a lot right now when we are referring to what the Winnipeg Jets need. And they sort of need to get a few wins on some players that, are not top 10 picks. And how you identify those guys and how you nurture and develop them and give them that opportunity to show what they can do is one of the most fascinating things in putting together teams and developing players right now. And when you're picking kids at 17 and 18 years old, that's got to be a huge challenge for scouting staffs to unearth the players that, might have that level in them at some point in the future.
That's true. But you know what? I think that one of the organizations that was traditionally very good at that was Winnipeg and still can be. I mean, I think there's a lot of guys where the jury's still out on what they're going to be. But I think about guys like Andrew Kopp and like even drafting a Jacob Trouba in the top 10 and like, those guys that had that innate competitiveness that were, big parts of it. And, Kyle Connor was, again, a first round draft pick, but he was picked out of the USHL. He was picked out of it. It was kind of like, all right, this is a guy that was continually doubted. And now we see the value in what he's brought. And obviously it's, led to him being a superstar player. Connor Hellebuck, same thing. Like he did not follow the traditional path. And so this is a team that has really been built on that level of success. And so I still think that they can be. And like a guy like Colby Barlow, I think that's a player, you don't draft him for his ceiling because I don't think there was a huge ceiling there. He was a player that you draft because the floor was so high. You're like, this guy is so competitive. He's going to find a way. Right. But you're right. You got to get those guys outside of the first round. You've got to find those guys later. And, you think about all the years that it took Colorado to get to the point that they're at now. That was a team that never drafted well outside of the first round. They had no picks from outside of the first round, maybe a couple here and there. And they had to go outside and find those guys. So they're still out there, but there's a lot of different ways to build a team, but that is probably especially for Winnipeg, one of the fastest ways to do it is to really draft well, develop well, and get these guys into the system and get them into, the style of play that you want to get.
Chris, Jet fans and fans of 16 other teams are going to be stressing going into next Thursday with the draft lottery. They will select the first and second pick. Obviously, if teams are more than 10 back, they can just move up that many spots. For teams like Winnipeg and Toronto and Boston and Calgary, Chicago, Edmonton, the Rangers, and Vancouver, of course, how what would a win be? Like, what is at stake right now? Is this a kind of, in your mind, top heavy with the prospects, or are we talking about a group of 7, 8, 9, 10 prospects that I don't want to say are interchangeable, but top of the draft, how big a win would it be for teams like in the Jets' position to get up into 1 or 2?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's interesting because I think that the mid-range of this first round, or rather the top range, and if you say, okay, well, where are the tiers at? I think that there's a lot less separation between the 1, 2, the 1 and the 2, and then the next 8. I think that that's probably a win at this point. I think for Winnipeg is being within the top, 10, 8 to 10 picks, to have your choice that you'll still get one of the top defensemen, maybe one of the centers, maybe one of the, the premier wings that could potentially slip. I think that you're in a better position if you're inside the top 12, essentially, of getting something that I think will be a potential foundational piece. Because Gavin McKenna is the odds-on favorite to be the number 1 pick, but how does he stack up against previous number 1 picks? Is he more, I don't think he's going to be like Alexis Lafreniere, but I also don't think that he's, Jack Hughes either. That's the kind of thing where we're talking about. Where is he between those two guys is probably where he's at. Ivar Stenberg, incredible wing, but again, an undersized winger with high-end skill. Where I think the value of this draft is in the defenseman. And I think if Winnipeg is able to come out of this draft with one of the defensemen, I think that that's actually an area where they could significantly improve themselves for the long term. You look at Chase Reed, good 2-way defenseman, 6'2", mobile. He's a top player. Keaton Verhoff playing down in North Dakota, high upside player, big size, has a lot of work to do. I think there's still a long way to go. I haven't loved his game this year. I haven't loved his progression this year, but I think that there's more for him to get to. Carson Karls, solid 2-way guy. Daxon Rudolph, another 2-way guy with higher end offensive capabilities, was one of the leading scorers for a top team in the WHL this year. So I think that getting one of those guys, or like an Albert Smits as well, the Latvian defenseman, that's a really good spot to be in. If you're coming away with one of those pieces. Caleb Malhotra is another guy, the centers. Caleb Malhotra, Tynan Lawrence, the top 2 centers. Tynan Lawrence is playing pretty well for Canada at the Under-18 World Championship. Caleb Malhotra has been a beast in the OHL playoffs. There's a lot of different options, but those are a lot of names I just threw at you guys, and that is the kind of where that value is. And then once you start getting outside of that group, that's when you start kind of seeing even the Tynan Lawrence is probably on the lower end of that group. And then you got, kind of the next level of defensemen and guys like Ethan Belchetz and others that are like, okay, I think there's something there, but I'm less convinced of it. I think if I'm the Winnipeg Jets, and I know they've got Sasha Boumediene in the system now, I see a lot better. I see a way to improve my blue line even further with this group, or I get the real, I'm in the range there. I can get a Caleb Malhotra and have a tremendous 2-way center who is competitive. He might not have the highest offensive ceiling, but he's showing that he can score. So I think there's a lot of really good positions that they could end up in if they're within that top 10.
It's funny because, at the end of the season, the Jets, went on a bit of a run, and they ended up passing a few teams. And, we were worried about the worst case scenario where the team, hey, we had a terrible first half of the season, but we're better than this. We went on this run and you finish just short. For instance, where St. Louis and Jersey are picking in and around 12.
Right.
Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, they didn't finish great after that loss to Philly. They lost the last few games. They ended up in the 7th spot. So the worst case scenario for Winnipeg would be moving back to 9, and that's somewhat unlikely. It would be both teams winning the lottery would be on a small chance behind them. So let's assume they stay where they are at the 7 pick. Are you pretty sure that, were we going to see Stenberg and McKenna go 1-2, probably McKenna first, but is that a pretty safe bet that those 2 guys, or is there a player that could jump into the top 2?
Yeah, I think that there's, to me, the the safest thing at this point appears to be McKenna at 1. I think after that, a lot can happen. I think that there's a lot of different things. Caleb Malhotra's emergence as the top center in the draft has definitely changed the dynamic of what the top 3 could look like. I think Stenberg is going to get a chance potentially with Sweden's national team, as is McKenna with Canada's national team at the Men's Worlds. We'll see how that changes the dynamic of things. But I still think like there could be any number of the defensemen that go in any order. I mean, I don't think there's consensus on who's the number 1 defenseman, who's the number 1 guy. I think like Chase Reed is kind of floated around there, but you can hear from other teams. And so I really think that, in that 7 range, the most likely scenario is you are going to be able to get one of the premier defensemen in this draft, and it'll likely be who's ever left at that point. That could be any one of, Rudolph, Smits. I think it's less likely you'd see Verhoff and Reed down that range, but even less likely that you'd see Carls down in that range. But, like if it's a Rudolph or a Smits, I think that those are really good options for, a foundational piece, guys that could be in your top 4 in the very near future. So I think that'd be a great situation to be in. And then, what's the chance that maybe Stenberg slips far enough? It would not shock me in the least to see teams pass over him in favor of premium positions of center and defense because of, things. But I still think he is, if not the second best prospect in this draft, within the top 5. So, if I'm a betting man, I think one of the premium defensemen will still be there for Winnipeg.
Center has been such an issue for Winnipeg. You got Mark Scheifele, and they've been trying to fill the 2 hole for the better part of the last 7 or 8 years. You mentioned Malhotra. Is he your number 1 center, as you mentioned? Chances on him being there at 7. And when you look at Tynan Lawrence, Viggo Bjork, a small guy, but another guy that a lot of people have in the top 10. If the Jets were set on taking a center, how will they make out if they're picking in at 7?
I think they could make out well. Like I think it'd be lucky if Malhotra was still there. I just think that his late season push has really put him on a trajectory to be, potentially a top 5 pick in this draft. It's not out of the realm of possibility though. So I think if you get that player, then you're feeling pretty good. And yes, he is my number 1 center. The Tynan Lawrence one is really interesting because I do think coming into the season, I was super high on Tynan Lawrence, super high on him. And I think that I still, he had a bit of a weird draft year. He was injured at the beginning of the season, missed a while, came back, was okay in the USHL, wasn't amazing. And he was very good, I should say. Like he was good, but he wasn't like, is this guy a top 5 pick good at that point? And then he goes to Boston University, for the second half of the season and had a really hard time producing, though I do think that we saw flashes of what he can be. I think if you are a believer in Tynan Lawrence's upside and you really want a center, there's a chance that you could get a huge value out of that player. There's a lot of unknowns in terms of like what we saw this year. It's like, is the hockey sense as strong as we thought it was last year? I think he's highly competitive. I think he's incredibly skilled. He's got some quickness to him. Like, I think that that's a reasonable place to select that player. Would I pass up some of those premium defensemen for the center in that case? I'd be more willing to, take Malhotra than I necessarily would be Lawrence in that scenario. But I think that that's something that they can look at because I do think there's still tremendous upside with Tynan Lawrence. And he very well could have a breakout season at Boston University next year. And we forget that this season was as tough as it was for him. But there are good options. Like, I think if you're in the top 10 of this draft, or even the top 12 of this draft, you've got good options available to you to land a prospect that's going to be impactful for your franchise.
Who is this Viggo Bjork? I hear more and more about him as of late. I mean, you look at the numbers; they don't really go crazy. I mean, SHL 6-9 for 15 points in 42 games. He's 5'10", not a big guy, but there's a lot of people that think that this guy can be a difference maker at the NHL level.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think the big question is how many teams are going to be willing to have him be a full-time center. He's 5'9", probably, really, in terms of his. I think he's maybe listed at 5'10", but I'd be surprised if that were
Sounds like
true.
Cole Perfetti, really talented
Yeah,
offensive player that didn't really get a chance to play center.
Right, exactly. And I mean, if anybody was watching the World Juniors this year, they saw a player that was absolutely incredible at the two-way game. I think he was unbelievable. Probably one of their best forwards. And Ivar Stenberg got all the accolades, but I really think Bjork was the biggest difference maker. He was the guy that the coach trusted more than anybody, which was crazy. I think, if you are looking at the centers in this draft, the only thing he doesn't have relative to the other guys is the size, because he is competitive. He plays a fearless game. He was really good in the pro ranks this year. He was really good in the playoffs this year. He's getting a look with the Trey Kroner and the men's senior team. So there's a lot to really, really like about this player. The question is like, does he have enough outside of the size? His skating is good. It's not amazing. He's incredibly skilled. He's incredibly intelligent, but it's just, man, it's a really tough trigger to pull if you're in that top 10 range, depending on who's still available. But I think he's going to play in the NHL. I think he's going to be a difference maker at that level. The question is whether it's on forward, at forward, at wing. Perfetti may be a good kind of corollary to him, though I do think that Vigo is probably had, at least at the younger age, has a bit more bite to him, and stuff. But yeah, I really like the player, so we'll see. But there's a lot of good options available here.
Chris, really appreciate the time as always. Looking forward to hopefully getting another chat or two in with you before Buffalo. Thanks so much, and just fill people in on what you and the team at Flow Hockey have cooking right now. Obviously, we're paying attention to these AHL playoff games, but also your content.
Yeah, so obviously Flow Hockey is the place to watch the Calder Cup playoffs this year. It's also the place to watch the OHL and QMJHL playoffs. We're getting closer and closer to the finals there. Also a lot of Canadian Junior A hockey, which is mostly just started to wrap up here, but lots of opportunities there. As far as content goes, we're going to be doing a ton with the draft lottery, obviously mock drafts, other things of that nature. My draft rankings will be coming out a little bit later as well. So we've got a ton of that, and then just covering the AHL and the Calder Cup playoffs as in-depth as we can. Every game is available there, so subscribe and be able to watch the Moose and watch all the other teams that you can handle. I mean, it's crazy the amount of hockey we have going, and the way my nights have been filled up here. So it's been a lot of fun. I appreciate the chance to tell people about it, and certainly appreciate the chance to be on the show again. It's always great to talk to you.
Let's catch up again soon, Chris. Thanks so much for doing this.
All right, thank you. We'll see you.
All right, there's Chris Peters. We're talking a little NHL draft. Don't forget, it's the CFL draft tonight. Bombers picking at 4. Going to be very interested to see where Winnipegger Giordano Vaccaro goes. Many say that, he's 3 Down has him at 11 in their prospects, but he's the one offensive lineman who's guaranteed to be in the CFL next year, as he just had limited time at Purdue. They know what he did at the University of Manitoba. Would love to see that. But we are going to hook up with Murat Atesh coming up as we continue the hockey talk on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Murat live as the show continues. Princess Auto is a proud sponsor of Winnipeg Sports Talk, in a lot of ways synonymous with Winnipeg. Headquartered here in the Peg, founded here in Winnipeg, and now serving Canadians coast to coast with the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. So while we wait for the Bombers to kick off, get ready for spring. Those projects on your list with great deals throughout the month waiting for you at your local Princess Auto, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West in the city, out in Brandon. And you can always shop online 24 hours a day at princessauto.com. Spring is just around the corner, and our friends at Chud's Power Sports up in Gimli, Manitoba's power sports superstar, are ready to get this snow out of here. But before we do that, great end-of-season deals on sleds and snowmobiles that you can check out. But as we get excited for the snow to leave, great preseason deals on motorcycles of all brands the best in ATVs and side-by-sides, not to mention golf carts for the summer up ahead as well. And it doesn't stop there. Amazing RV options for you to take advantage of the summer, and so many options when it comes to boats as well, in addition to outboard motors from Suzuki and Mercury. The best deals in town. That's how they've been in business as Manitoba's Powersports Superstore for 80 years. Pop out and see him in Gimli at the corner of Highway 8 and 231, and shop online today at their website at chudspowersports.com. April and spring are here, and Donnie and the gang at Manitoba Battery are kicking it off strong. Spring Power event. Right now, you can save big on the batteries that you actually need this season. Lawn tractor batteries starting at just $37.50. RV and deep cycle batteries from $69.50, and heavy duty power like Group 27 and 78 DT starting at $89.50. Need serious cranking power? Check out their 13-inch stud post battery, $94.50 while supplies last. All in stock and all priced to move. Visit Manitoba Battery on the north side on Logan Avenue, on the south side on Dovercourt Drive, and get powered up for spring at Manitoba Battery, powering what matters. Check them out online today at manitobabattery.com. All right, just about to bring in our pal Murat Atesh, who's out on the West Coast right now. This segment brought to you by Prairie Toyota Dealers and the Toyota Tacoma. The Toyota Tacoma standard I-Force engine boasts an impressive towing capacity of up to 6,400 pounds. It's the most powerful Tacoma ever. So whether you're hauling gear to the rink or heading to an away game, you can tackle it with ease. And the available panoramic multi-terrain view monitor gives you a live under-floor view to navigate even the toughest terrain with ease. Experience power, capability, and convenience with the Toyota Tacoma. Visit shoptoyota.ca or your local Prairie Toyota dealer during Red Tag Days from March through May. To the West Coast we go. Hollywood Murat Atesh joins us now from California after you just took in Game 4 between the Avs and the Kings. Murat, great to have you on the program. What was that game like in the experience? I mean, a historic player in Anze Kopitar at least went out on home ice. I know the Kings would have liked to maybe stick around a little bit longer, but you saw the final lap of a legend there.
Yeah, it was a really special opportunity. Just with our writer out here was unable to make it, and so I got to pinch hit, and it turned out to be a historic game with Anze Kopitar and his farewell. And let me tell you, from a Winnipeg perspective, it was a pretty good preview of just how good those Colorado Avalanche are and just how much that first round would have been a disaster. I think from the Winnipeg perspective, the Kings gave it everything they had. Kopitar gave it everything he had. He was really trying to put them on his back at different times. In the end, not nearly enough. And then we got to talk to him after the game, a little bit of a tearful goodbye. The cool thing about it, though, for me was that he was flanked by his two kids, 11-year-old and 9-year-old, at the press conference. And I don't know, I guess, I was there for a Kings-Jets game earlier this season where during the intermission, during the kids' game, a number 11 skates gracefully up to take the opening face-off. You can tell from his posture right off the hop that, this is a player. He wins the draw. He goes off, eventually goes and scores. I'm like, wait a second, it's Kopitar's kid. So we got a really sweet moment at the podium where I'm like, well, how cool for you is it to not only have your kids see you grow up and you've played for long enough that they got to see you be a dominant player, but you got to see them grow up and skate on the same ice. And then Kopitar was giving it to his kid. He's like, wait, did you really score? Did you score that day? Who was that against? And it's clear that this is a man who's ready to be a full-time dad. He was emotional about it. He loves what he's done in LA. He loves his 2 cups, but they were no match for Colorado, and now he's going full dad mode.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned the Jets because we just had a great conversation with Chris Peters on the upcoming draft and kind of where the tiers are of players. And listen, as much as, the last 4 games were pretty miserable for people around, I mean, I think the Jets are in a much better situation today, knowing that, they've got the opportunity to maybe be picking 1 or 2, or I guess there's a 0.2% chance of 3. But even if they finish up at 7 or 8, there's a pretty good player awaiting for them, and that would not have been the case if they'd squeezed in at the and then played the 4 or 5 games against Colorado and then been doing what the Kings is doing right now. So pretty clear that we when we move forward, there'll be lots of draft talk, lots of prospect talk, what will be available for the Winnipeg Jets. But it is clear that for a team that hasn't had a lot of luck in the first round and hasn't picked this high in a long time, May 5th and whatever it is, June 26th, very important days for the Jets as they look ahead to filling their cupboards with a top prospect that could hopefully be a cornerstone piece moving into the future.
Yeah, I mean, whatever the lottery does to that pick, it's going to be higher than any that Winnipeg's made since it took Patrick Laine number 2 in 2016, right? Like even Cole Perfetti, who's made their team, who's a top 6 player. I know that fans will want more of what they saw down the stretch as opposed to the first half of his season, right? Like that's a number 10 overall pick. You got to go back pretty far to get to a 7 or in that range for the Winnipeg Jets. And I think that's a big deal. I also think that for all of the grief about the push to the playoffs and the disappointment of this season, when you have some foundational pieces in place, when you have a Connor Hellebuck, when you have a Josh Morrissey, assuming Hellebuck's back, when you have all of these guys, Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connor locked into place, you have a pretty high floor for a lottery team, and opportunities like this to draft 7 or whatever else it ends up becoming are rare. That is a unique opportunity to get top-end talent, whether it's a big right-handed defenseman, whether it's a center like Lawrence or Malhotra. Like, there are opportunities here to get players that, the mushy middle version of the Jets that just got swept by Colorado would have had no chance to get. And I think that's a huge deal.
No doubt about it. Murat, when we are talking about this offseason and like what's going on right now, meetings at every level of the organization, where would you say things stand with the Jets in comparison to their peers? And maybe this is a difficult question for you to ask or for you to answer, but we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Amateur scouting today in 2026 with their present group, and pro scouting at 2026. And I will say it with a caveat, like pro scouting, it all depends on who you can get to come. I mean, we have no idea all the teams and players that they've tried to acquire, whether it be free agency, trades, all of that stuff. But is there one area that you would identify as a place where the team maybe should put more resources into or focus in on more right now? When you look at what this team needs to succeed and thrive long-term, given their challenges?
It's a great question, and you're right. It is challenging to answer with any with the type of accuracy that you really want to speak authoritatively about something. Like the processes that the scouts undergo are sort of between them and Jets management, right? Like, we're not in that room. We're not having that conversation. And what I learn is secondhand or based on the results as opposed to the process. And I think process is a really big deal. One thing that I am fairly confident in is that the Como era up until 2015 of amateur scouting, one of the hallmarks for that group was cross communication between the different silos, whether it was an area scout having input on some guys that the director of amateur scouting had seen. I think that there was a sense at that time that folks were listened to, and that there was less siloing in terms of communication. Now, is that still the case as Hilliers had, 9 years, 10, 11 years already? Are those communication siloing issues still persistent at this stage? I'm not necessarily sure. But those are types of things that I think would be worth looking at. It may be that Winnipeg has tremendous amateur scouts, but there could be different ways to handle the information and the communication between them. But I can't say that authoritatively because that's not firsthand. And on the pro side of things, we can really only judge them by their results. And if you're looking at the funnel of players that the pro scouts might want to bring in compared to what arrives, right? There's like everybody that's on their blue sky list. well, a small percentage of those are actually available for them in any given year. And then a small percentage of those will actually be interested in Winnipeg. And a small percentage of those would see themselves having an opportunity on the Jets roster, whether they love Winnipeg or not. And I mean, it sounds like I'm making excuses as I listen to myself. I'm like, hey, it's just too hard a job. But I guess to be really robust in terms of analyzing it and say something definitively, it's tough. It's tough to speak authoritatively about it to you here today.
Well, speaking of pro scouting, great news on the Moose front. That comeback in the series led by 2 real solid games by Dom DiVincentis. And, you know, the Jaegers, the Lambers, the Salomonsons, and they get a chance to go up against one of the top teams in the league in a best-of-5 starting. I know you've been on the West Coast, so been kind of catching up with a lot of it, but I think that win on Sunday was huge for the team and the players, regardless of how things go against Grand Rapids, just to get more meaningful playoff hockey, especially for a number of young guys that are still getting their feet wet, really, as professionals.
Yeah, like, as I understand it, and we were talking a little bit about this before, Grand Rapids kind of a juggernaut. This is a challenge coming up for this group, but there's some experience that they have now that they didn't have a week ago and couldn't have had the opportunity to get had they fallen short of clinching their spot. So now you have experience. DiVincentis has come into a series halfway through, or I guess a third of the way through, played 2 tremendous games and delivered 1 goal against and some really great saves along the way. That's huge in a high pressure stakes environment. And, you know, you've had Braden Yeager win key faceoffs. You've had different players. You had Colby Barlow come to life down the stretch, scoring 4 goals in his last 4 games. He doubled his shot rate down the stretch compared to what it had been earlier in the season. And when the games are on the line and these guys have this experience, you hope that that means that they're better versions of themselves when it comes time for the Winnipeg Jets to take a look down the line. The other thing that I want to say is just looking at pure game sheet from Sunday's clinching game, who scores the goals? It's Walker Duehr and Samuel Fagemo, whose name I continue to struggle pronouncing. They were part of a concerted effort on Cheveldayoff and Craig Heisinger's part last year to make sure that the Manitoba Moose were never a wasteland again, that they weren't going to finish 31st, that they weren't going to finish dead last in goals. Last year's team spent so much effort just to get anywhere near the front of the net. Well, now you've got these AHL veterans helping get them into the second round such that these prospects can have a little bit more experience. Has everybody got the opportunity that they deserve? Are the minutes what they should be? Blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm not sure, but if you're the Winnipeg Jets looking for your young players to get experience, you found it in the first round or that 3-game round. And now you're going to get it again against Grand Rapids.
Murat, you know who else was just an absolute monster for the Moose in the series, and especially in Game 3, was our old pal, the Gus Bus. David Gustafsson set up both of the goals, one off a turnover that he basically made happen. And in the dot, in the third period, like I didn't have the numbers, I was in the stands, but he was like 8 of 9 or something in the faceoff, and they just kept on winning. They kept throwing him out there. It got me a lot of thinking. I mean, listen, I don't want to relitigate the entire season and what maybe one Gus instead of the other Gus might have done for the team, but I was kind of looking at it going, it's too bad that, you know, he'll be gone. And then I realized he's an RFA. Can you see a path for David Gustafsson to contribute next year for the Winnipeg Jets?
Well, I mean, assuming that he wants to. Speaking of buses, the really loud one behind me, don't know if the audio is picking that up for the fans out there. The thing for me with Gustafsson is really just about what his hopes are, what his values are, because as an RFA, there should be opportunity there. And, you know, he is in that group now of AHL veteran players who can really drive play at that level. I think that there's an NHL quality defender, 2-way player there as well. And there's just been situations where maybe the offense has gone to him to die a little bit. That's where the leg has been. But coming out of camp even this year, you know, he was a little bit underwhelming by the end of camp. Probably Walker Duehr was a step ahead of him, probably, you know, a step ahead of Pearson at that time. Anyway, that's a digression. David Gustafsson should have some opportunity should he sign and return to the Winnipeg Jets. I fear that they've sort of penciled him in as a full-time minor league player at this stage, but you never know. And maybe if he and Koepke can get something going on that fourth line, there would be something to it for Winnipeg.
Well, and you know what? Cole Koepke, going back to pro scouting, is an example of them finding a guy that they were able to get that they really did flourish. And, you know, I was talking with Jeff Hamilton yesterday about sort of my hopes of how this offseason would go. And I mean, I'm not suggesting they're going to just solve the 2C position basically by, you know, signing. I mean, we're talking about Michael Granlund right now and what he's doing for Anaheim and how good he would have looked in a spot like that. And I'm sure they picked up the phone and made a run at it, and he decided, you know what, I think I'm going to go to Anaheim and be that player there. But if you cannot get that, I would think that for guys that have been maybe in situations where they didn't think that they had the best opportunity, a shorter term deal with Winnipeg, knowing the holes that they have in their roster, might all of a sudden be a little bit more attractive to some guys that really do have the self-belief that all they need is an opportunity to show that they can get the job done.
Yeah, you just have to land better than Nyquist and Pearson, because that was the bet. Yeah. That was the bet that they and Koepke, it took him a while. I think that maybe Scott Arniel was frustrated by some of the early lack of finish. Like, he had some really great shorthanded rushes and just couldn't bury for a little while. And then he found himself a little bit on the outs, got back in. And I think Arniel was really happy with his work down the stretch. So for me, your point about, probably they made that call. I was under the impression Granlund wanted to play in the States, and that was just locked. Now, I think Koepke's really illustrative of that funnel idea I was talking about earlier, where you have a whole bunch of leads, you whittle them down to who actually could fit on your roster and who has an interest. And, you know, Cole Koepke won a high school championship with Dylan Sandberg. Their families are close. He used to play outdoor hockey on the lake with Neil Pionk growing up, and Hermantown is, you know, pretty close to Winnipeg in the scheme of things. So if you're the Winnipeg Jets trying to be the Green Bay Packers or whomever, you're just leaning on your culture, leaning on the small market, you know, as an advantage as opposed to a strength. Guys in your backyard like that, I think, would be one sign of areas that the Jets have had some success, partly because of those personal relationships.
Murat Atesh is with us. As you can see, down in Southern California, just finished up wrapping up the Kings season. You mentioned you've seen quite a bit of Colorado. Have you seen much of the rest of the playoffs, in particular the Dallas-Minnesota series? Very interested in your thoughts on that one that's now going to a fifth game tonight.
Yeah, you know, in some ways it reminds me of Winnipeg-St. Louis last year, where these two teams are just beating up on each other. And, you know, you wonder about the second round. What will they have left? What could they give Colorado in that next matchup? I think it's been one of the best series available. I think Matt Boldy has been particularly impressive to me too. I hate what he did against Team Canada in the gold medal game, but it's clear that he's arrived at a different level for Minnesota this season. We talk about the stars. We talk about the Avalanche's stars. Well, there's one more that gives Minnesota a fighting chance in this. And then, you know, I just look at the matchups and I think of Mikko Rantanen and, you know, the hat trick he scored against Colorado to basically eliminate them last year for the Stars. And then, of course, he did it again against Winnipeg in game one. Well, he's actually been more or less contained by the Joel Eriksson-Ek line with Boldy on it. And you're like, geez, Eriksson-Ek, he's still a pain in the ass in terms of players to play against. And he's having a really good series. I'm glad that Heiskanen's more or less healthy. Sucks for them that Rope Hintz isn't available. There are just so many, I want to say, underrated stars in this series on both teams, and they're going toe-to-toe, and it's first-round hockey at its finest in a lot of ways.
Yeah, man, what a doubleheader we've got early on. I'm just seeing that in Buffalo, the Blade Gang will be banging the drum tonight before Game 5 in Bruins Sabres. That's going to be bananas. And then 7 o'clock, it's going to be the Stars and the Minnesota Wild in a crucial Game 5. Murat, what do you make of the Oilers being on life support against the Ducks?
Well, I mean, they didn't have the season that gave you a sense of belief, but you always knew, like, well, hey, last year and the year before, they kept finding a way. They kept finding a way. They were down in series. They'd come back. They always had that next gear. But what are you supposed to do when one of the drivers of that gear and all those other gears that they have is on the shelf, or a game time decision tonight in Connor McDavid? Like, the biggest game breaker available may not even be available to play. They are in trouble. I don't think that they've shown the dynamism or dominance that gives the kind of hope that says that they're going to make the comeback that they need to. But of course, pardon me, they have been down this road before. They have survived it before. They just had both their big guns leading the way, and it's been underwhelming for McDavid. I don't know if it's an ankle or what. You just need him. And then meanwhile, those Anaheim Ducks, their youth, their speed, and a couple of veterans too. I mean, it's just it's been interesting to watch them shine on another level when everybody assumed that they'd be dead and buried by now.
Murat, great having you on the program as always. Enjoy the sunny weather. Enjoy the hockey tonight, and we will look forward to speaking with you next week as we get a little closer to finding out where the Jets are picking in the draft in Buffalo at the end of June. Thanks as always for the time. Anything you want to plug coming up in the Athletic?
Well, hey, throw up the link or in the chat, talk about it. Like, we've got the Winnipeg Jets off-season fan survey right now. It is one of my favorite pieces every single year. It went live yesterday. Go to the Athletic, go to the Winnipeg Jets section, and just let us know what went wrong. What's your confidence like in Shoveldayoff and Arneal right now? What should they do with their free agents, including Jonathan Toews, if he does decide to come back? There are so many questions where, like, the feedback has been phenomenal so far. I think we're on pace to set a record for the number of responses. So if you hadn't got a chance to get down there, do it. I want to know what you think about the Winnipeg Jets and what you think the Winnipeg Jets should do. I'll write about all of it in a couple of pieces next week.
Something tells me that the WST chat and everyone in it will have a take or two for you at the Athletic. Remis just thrown the link right there for the Jets fan survey. Bang that link, get all your takes to Murat, and look forward to the write-up coming up in the Athletic. Murat, you be well, pal. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Good stuff. There is Murat Atesh. Shades of Jim Morrison walking the streets of Los Angeles, California. Looking very cool while he's at it as well, joining us today on the program. That was great stuff with Murat. All right, we've got Adam Bighill coming up in a couple minutes. Gang, the Tri-Hospital Dream Lottery is open for business right now. Get your tickets and be part of the biggest grand prize ever. $1.35 million Canadian, tax-free, or your choice of an assortment of incredible dream home packages valued at over $1.7 million. Now, if you get your tickets in now, you're also in for all of the amazing early bird prizes and bonus prizes. Let me tell you this, the summer bonus, the spring bonus we're in for right now is worth over $58,000. You can get a 26 Subaru Crosstrek Hybrid plus a paddleboards package, a 26 Toyota Cross Hybrid plus a kayak package, or $40K, and 5 spring bonus shop winners of a $2,000 shopping spree or $1,500 tax-free cash. The summer bonuses are worth over $95,000. A Land Rover Discovery Sport Landmark or a Mercedes-Benz GLC 300, $50,000 travel voucher plus $20,000 cash, or $62,500. More shopping sprees to come. And of course, the early bird prizes are worth over $257,000 as well. Get your tickets now. You'll be eligible for the grand prizes in every early bird prize available. And it's all in support of Manitoba's hospitals, the Health Sciences Center, the St. Boniface Hospital, and the HSC Children's Hospital. Get those tickets today. TryHospitalDream.com. You can also call toll-free 844-654-4677 or get them in person at London Drugs and Red River Co-op food stores. Again, order online today in support of our big three hospitals at tryhospitaldream.com. Was just talking to Murad about this great slate of games tonight. Buffalo, Boston, Minnesota, Dallas early, Oilers on life support late. No better place to go than your local Boston Pizza. Take in all the goodies on that playoff menu, scarf down a couple pints or schooners, maybe some world-famous BP wings, a gourmet pizza as well, and the game on the big screen with sound. Great reno, by the way, to our friends over at BP Taylor. Was in there on the weekend watching the games, and a great job of that. Make it Boston Pizza tonight for the playoff action, and if you are staying at home, you can order online at bostonpizza.com. Do want to thank our friends at Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge for their support of WST. We'll be there at the end of May. I cannot wait to get out there. A little earlier in the season than I've been before. If you're thinking about a world-class fly-in fishing experience where you can be on the water in less than 2 hours from the city of Winnipeg, Aikens Lake is the spot. Go to aikenslake.com for more information on options as well as available for the 2026 fishing season. Say hi to Pitt from the boys at Winnipeg Sports Talk. And, we're swinging them now. Courses are opening. I cannot wait in the next few days to get out to Breezy Bend for the first round of the season. Of course, Breezy, a great supporter of ours and sponsors of Golf Reports and the leaderboard on WST. Go to breezybend.ca for more information on membership and maybe making Breezy one of Winnipeg's top private courses, their long-term golfing home for you and your family. You can also hit up our pal Corey Johnson over there at 895-7205 for more information on Breezy Bend. All right, we are going to check in with the MJHL champion Niverville Nighthawks before the end of the show, but wanted to get Adam Bighill on to discuss his retirement as a Winnipeg Blue Bomber. And moving on to the next chapter of life, let's welcome in the Bomber legend now to WST. Winnipeg Blue Bomber and CFL legend Adam Bighill signed with the Bombers last year for a one-day contract to officially retire as a Bomber, and now moving on to the new chapter of his life. The CFL great joins us now. Adam Bighill, welcome back to Winnipeg Sports Talk, and congratulations, my friend. We've had many chats on this show before with everything you brought to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and we knew it would happen at some point, but it was great to see you retire as a Bomber.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's a great day to kind of be able to end my career, on my terms, and no better way to do it than here in Winnipeg.
Adam, just thinking about the career that you had, I think back to 2011, and it had been a tough run for the Blue Bombers, and the team gets to the Grey Cup and goes up against a bit of a buzzsaw in the BC Lions, of which you were a big part about it. That was your rookie season. That team started off 0-5 and ended up rallying. Take us back to the start. How did you end up in the Canadian Football League? Did you know much about it? And tell us about that first year.
I knew a little bit. I mean, I played with Mike Riley in college, and I knew he went to BC after his stint in the NFL. He said good things. He said, hey, I should check it out. And that kind of put it on my radar. So I went to a workout for the BC Lions in Portland, did well. I almost thought I wasn't coming to the CFL as they originally told me, hey, we're going to bring you to camp. Don't have enough room. And then ended up getting a call back the next day. Hey, something changed. Can you still come to camp? So, it was, touch and go there for a bit, but got an opportunity to come into camp and earn my way onto the field. And, it was a bit of a crazy year, 0-5. Like I'd never lost 5 games in a season in my life playing football at any age level. So, starting off 0-5 on a professional football team, I'm like, wow, I am not used to this. And we made some changes. Things got better from there. We brought in a few more guys. Wally kind of got us all shaped up, and we went on a run, 12 in a row to go to the playoffs and clinch the first round bye. Win the West final handedly, and then go into winning the Grey Cup. So it was a massive turnaround of a year, and quite an experience my first time as a pro.
You mentioned that they said you probably weren't going to come to camp. At what point, if you thought that door was closed, were you thinking moving on to the next chapter of life, or were you committed to playing football somewhere at that point if it wasn't north of the border?
No, I mean, it's a good question. It was a really tough time because the NFL lockout was going on. I mean, that's why I took a contract opportunity with the Lions, just because the NFL business was closed. So as soon as if you weren't drafted, you weren't getting signed as a free agent because business operations were effectively shut down. So, I was going to look for any opportunity to play. I didn't want to give up on it that quick, but I started having real thoughts of, maybe this isn't going to happen.
Well, you stuck around and, became a Lion legend. But in 2017, you get the opportunity to go to the National Football League. I'm sure that had been a dream. I mean, it's any agent's dream, even if you love it in Canada, you know that the money's great in the National Football League. Tell us about how did that come up? Had you been planning for it for a while? Were the Saints the one team that gave you the opportunity? And how do you look back at the NFL season?
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. I mean, you first going back into that era when I was signing contracts. Back there was no NFL window. Guys couldn't get out of their contract every single year to go sign a deal.
Sure.
So I had to negotiate a window in my contract. I had to take a pay cut to bet on myself to get an opportunity to get signed by a team. Doesn't mean you are. And I had to, take money off the table just to negotiate that opportunity. So, I bet on myself. After 2016, I got the opportunity. Had a handful of teams interested in working me out, and the Saints were the first ones. And had a killer workout. They offered me right after the workout, and I had a couple other workouts ready to go. And at the end of the day, I could only sign with one team. And, the first team I work out with is the first team that wants to sign me. And, situationally, it looked like a decent place to go. So we decided to go with the Saints. And, fast forwarding to my time there, I made the team, spent 3 games on the active roster, played really well, had a killer preseason, media and a lot of fans and myself were kind of a little bit, dismayed that, I didn't make the opening roster per se for the season. I did play week 1 for Minnesota Monday Night Football, but, being on the roster, I think was my expectation based on my performance and a lot of people's expectation based on everything that I did. It just wasn't afforded the opportunity. The NFL works differently in terms of the way the business is run. I didn't have a large signing bonus. Several other linebackers got signed in free agency that did have bigger bonuses than me. So it matters, how much you get paid, where you're coming from, what's your story, and who's got your back. You kind of learn down there too that, the scouting department and the coaching office are 2 separate entities. They kind of both see things differently. It's scouting office is finding the best football players. Coaching office is, not necessarily always in alignment with what maybe they're doing. So, I think Sean Payton comes from an older Bill Parcells era of, what does this guy look like? How long his our arms are? How tall is he? To me, being an undersized linebacker was a negative playing for me in his system, despite my production and, I think really deserving to be on the field and everything that I did. But, the thing that really I come away with there is, I had the respect of all my teammates in New Orleans for what I did. You can't, you can't BS your teammates, and your teammates know exactly where you stand. And, I had a lot of those guys coming and telling me that I should be on the field playing. So, overall, it was a good experience. Could have been better. So many people in the CFL, the fans, think the guys aren't good enough to go down to the States and play. It was not true. And we've heard many people say it. Chad Ochocinco saying it. So many people saying it. So many guys coming from the NFL and getting cut on CFL rosters. So, a lot of misunderstanding. And guess what? If you're a fan and you've never been here and you've never been in these shoes, you'll never understand. We can't help you understand. And that's just the way it is. So believe what you want doesn't mean it's true. But that gave me the opportunity to come back to the CFL and get back to playing ball. And, I had a lot of fun getting back here to Winnipeg, and it was a great opportunity.
Well, was it an easy decision knowing that the experience that you had, how successful you were in the Canadian Football League, where you were at with your family and your wife? Was it an easy decision to decide to go back to Canada? And why Winnipeg? How did that all come together?
Yeah, no, it was an easy decision. I had other workouts right when I was released from OTAs with the Saints in 2018. And, I had teams wanting to sign me, didn't want to give me the signing bonus I was looking for. So I said, that's okay. Like, I'm good with going back to the CFL. And I just had my second child. Leah was born. She was very young. And, I could be chasing this NFL dream of trying to get the right opportunity that you think you deserve. But once you learn how the business works down there, sometimes you have to make the hard decision. And for me, once again, I could chase being on that roster, being that guy, or, I can go back up to the CFL and have a very stable and amazing career, which I've already had, and just continue on it. And that was kind of the easy decision that I made, is that, I don't have to be trying to make the special teams roster, working my way up to play and prove that I could be a Pro Bowl linebacker. Like, I can go back to the CFL and be an all-star right from the get-go again, and just do what I love to do, playing football. So that was kind of the decision, which was pretty easy to do. So to come back.
Now, what about the Bombers? How did it all come together?
Yeah, I mean, oddly enough, O'Shea, back when I was a rookie, playing against Toronto, came up and, had some really encouraging words for me as a rookie, came up to me as an opposing coach and, told me, I'm going to have a long career and successful career in this league. And he was amazed at some of the things I could do. And that was an opposing coach coming up and talking to me. So we built a relationship from all the way back then, and I never forgot it. And we would always kind of chat every time we played Toronto, and just a few words. And, that's kind of a major part that made me feel comfortable coming to Winnipeg, fast forward to 2018 season. And let's not forget, Winnipeg had been really getting stronger from, I would say, 2015 onward, every year, kind of making meaningful progress. And handful of guys that I'd played with in BC were now in Winnipeg. And so, when I had offers on the table, Winnipeg was kind of the easy choice coming back. I mean, everyone thought I'd go back to BC. I was wanting to go back to BC as well, just naturally. Ed Hervey was a new GM there. He doesn't like superstars, obviously, and doesn't pay linebackers. So he's pretty well known for that. So he had no interest in bringing me back to BC. So that was off the table. And so there you go.
You come in, and I mean, that was at a period where the Bombers were, as you mentioned, sort of on the rise after, it ended up being 29 years without a Grey Cup. And I think of three of the most impactful free agent signings, not just for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, but really in recent CFL history. Stanley Bryant on the offensive line, you on the defense, and Andrew Harris in the backfield. And with that group, that core, it seemed like, things were going in the right direction. But the 2019 season ended up being pretty darn magical. What do you recall about that? And being a guy that was relatively new to Winnipeg, but was then in your second season, at what point did you sort of realize the impact that you and your teammates were having in this community, and just how big a moment that was for you guys to finally end that Grey Cup drought and set off parties across the province of Manitoba?
Yeah, well, you can really feel the energy and excitement rolling for 2018. We were a couple plays short from going to a Grey Cup that I think we would have won. So then you get to 2019, and we're kind of picking up where we left off, and there's a lot of excitement for what we're building. And we started off great. We had a little lull, kind of midway, and then picked it up again. And then towards the end, we won. We did it the hard way as the underdogs, going, to the visiting stadiums and earning our way all the way through to winning the Grey Cup. And, we just got better all the way through the season, as I talk about, by come November playing our best football. And surely we were absolutely doing that. We had a lot of the right guys in the room. And man, it would be something special. You'll never forget bringing a Grey Cup back to Winnipeg that hadn't happened for 29 years. And that's all you can hear about it. You can imagine. And the media here, when I first arrived in 2018, was intense. The frustration that people are going on in this province without a Grey Cup was palpable and sometimes hostile. So to be able to turn that over and then win back-to-back Grey Cups, and obviously you're going, 5 Grey Cups in a row, losing 3, which is unfortunate. But I mean, we really kind of turned this whole thing around and, created a dynasty, if you will, of just, elite teams. We should have finished more than we did the last 3 times, but, at the end of the day, I don't think anyone's, going to be, if you told them you're going to go to 5 straight Grey Cups, you'll win 2, I think they'd be pretty happy about that.
Well, I mean, let's just say it was night and day from what we had before you and the rest of those guys showed up in Winnipeg. So, I mean, we look back at this era as really a golden era of Blue Bomber football, and the organization. I mean, for you to leave right now, seeing that place sold out every game with where the team is business-wise and just in the landscape of sports, I mean, it must be rewarding to know what a big piece that you played, as well as your teammates played, in really making the Winnipeg Blue Bombers the crown jewel of the CFL. I mean, I'll be straight, that was not the case when you showed up.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, listen, I think Edber said it. It always starts at the top. The people that are from Wade on down through to then Kyle and Osh. The right kind of people in the organization running the right way, bringing in the right people. You need all of that to be able to, I think, really be successful. I mean, football is one of the greatest games in the world that you literally need everybody to get it done. You can't have any weak links, and we definitely had a roster that was years that was very, very competitive and full of just the right guys that work extremely hard, work harder than others, and were consistent and committed. And so yeah, it's amazing to be a part of that turnaround and part of that journey. And like I said, it took an entire organization, and I'm happy that I was able to bring my flavor to helping our room be successful. I mean, in terms of what I've seen, what I've done, but really what the standard of excellence is and what the bar of expectations are, such that it's very clear, where we have to go and what's acceptable and what's not. And I've gotten a lot of nice messages from teammates and guys I've played with, and that really, and it really helped me understand how much of an impact I was able to have on people. And it's just really nice to hear those things, that you impacted people positively and your presence was valuable, and you made a difference and a mark in people's lives.
I hope the impact that you can make moving forward is being an example of how athletes can prepare for retirement. You've been with us on a number of occasions during the off season when we'd poke around, talk about how things are going, and you'd always been working. You'd been working towards this. Tell us about this next chapter of making Winnipeg your home for you and your young family, and obviously now going full time with Wellington West, something that you've been working on for a number of years to prepare for this moment.
Yeah, well, Wellington West was the old version, and Wellington Altus Private Wealth is the new version. And so, yeah, I started, obviously when I came to Winnipeg in 2018, I'd already got my license in this industry. And so as an investment advisor, I started in 2019. So I started way back then, and we're looking at going on 7 years now. And so it was great to be able to start building a business within the city that I'm playing. And preparing for life after football, because inevitably football doesn't last forever. We know that. And wanted to make sure that, me and my family were set up. And, it's something, another area of life that I really enjoy is being able to work with clients on a day-to-day basis. That's, it's always different, whether you're working with a doctor, a lawyer, accountants, you're working with business owners of all different types, all different sectors. You get to learn and deal with different stuff at all time. And at the end of the day, I get to work with people. And I'm just such a math, science, statistics guy. If you would think about how I break down an opponent for football, I'm doing the same thing in markets. What are the most likely outcomes? What are the asset classes we're interested in? And how are we going to create solutions for clients to reach their goals? And so, at this point now, I've just passed my last test as well to become an associate portfolio manager, which is one of the highest declarations you can get in our industry. So really happy where I am here with my team, with Pavage, Bighill Private Wealth here at Wellington Altus. And we started the podcast and, delivering financial education and just thought leadership from our side, to help people understand what are the things that matter. So we got 3 episodes out. I'm releasing the 4th one coming up here soon. But, at the end of the day, yeah, I love what I get to do now. It allows Winnipeg to be home and get to work with people that have supported me in this community for a while now, and hopefully are going to want to continue to support me in my business as well.
Might not be as fun for many of you as talking football, but definitely check out the YouTube page. Remis just had it up. We'll throw a link in there. You can give the guys a sub and check out some of the important conversations to have. I'd imagine that there's probably a football player or two that could take your advice and get ready for it afterwards. I mean, it's amazing you've had such a long career, Adam, and being able to do what you can do. But the sport that you played professionally, probably the least kind and often the shortest careers. To be able to do what you've done, set your family up is one thing, but some important lessons to be told to young guys that are, making their money right now. Who knows for how long in the game?
Yeah, so I mean, listen, our podcast is kind of fun. I use the investment playbook as the name of the podcast. We talk, equivalent to, what's the next play we're going to call here? What is the strategy? All that kind of stuff. So it is football friendly. Now, for our teammates, and most people say, well, you probably work with a lot of your teammates. Actually, the CFL guys aren't my target clientele, mostly business owners and high net worth individuals I'm working with. However, I always work with my guys in the locker room and all our CFL players. I give them as much education as I can, completely free, making sure that they can set themselves up. I want to make sure they have the tools to be successful. And, I'm constantly on them, about learning, improving, and building on something outside of football. So, it's something that I'm passionate about, is making sure that these guys are set up.
Well, Adam, listen, and I mean, you can see the comments in the chat. People are, I love the Bighill era. Hopefully, you certainly left this team in a much better spot than when you showed up. And looking forward to seeing you around the city, around the park, as you and your family kind of grow together here in Winnipeg, where you've made your home. Congratulations on everything. I know this won't be the last time we chat on the program, but just to officially call it a wrap with the announcement that you're retiring a Winnipeg Blue Bomber, we wanted to have you on. All the best to you and the rest of the Bighill clan, Adam. Thanks so much. Congratulations.
Guys, anytime.
Great to have Adam on the show. Wish him well, and it'll be great to see him in the stands at Princess Auto Stadium moving forward. I'm sure he'll be a big part of the Blue Bomber alumni. Hey, speaking of the Blue Bombers, CFL draft tonight. Don't forget, folks, if you want to join me on the Huss Bus for the Labor Day Classic between the Bombers and Riders, get your deposits in before early bird pricing is finished. That is Thursday, April 30th. So you've got until Thursday. You just need a $100 deposit to lock in the early bird pricing. And when you do, let them know you're a WSTer and you want on the Huss Bus. It's the 1930crew@gmail.com. Fire them in an email. Tara will get back to you and get you arranged. You could also send them a message at the 1930crew on X, on Instagram, I think probably on Facebook as well, if you do Facebook. But email's probably the easiest. Just fire them a message saying, I want it on the Huss Bus, the 1930crew@gmail.com. Leave Saturday morning. We'll have breakfast for you. Big reception when we get to Regina. Obviously, the game day is unreal. A party beforehand, certainly a party afterwards, and then hopefully a victorious trip east after the Labor Day Classic. They've done such a great job of putting this together over the last few years. We've added another bus, so I just want to make sure that all you WSTers get in on the early bird pricing and count yourselves in. Go to the 1930crew@gmail.com or on socials and count yourselves in, and we will see you Labor Day weekend for Regina. All right. Niverville Nighthawks, MJHL champs, going to the Centennial Cup. We catch up with the coach and captain next on WST. Pretty historic win in the MJHL championship. The Niverville Nighthawks, just 6 years in the league, win their first ever Turnbull Cup and are heading to the national championship in PEI coming up next week. An absolute pleasure to welcome in the head coach, Dwight Hirst, and the captain, Adam Vigfusson, from the Nighthawks to the program. Gentlemen, congratulations and welcome to WST.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Dwight, let me start with you. You took over this program. We're already involved in the program, but took over towards the end of year 2. Tell us about the journey in just establishing the team in the community, the response from the people in Niverville, and leading to this great moment last week where you guys won your first championship.
Yeah, it's been a pretty good 4-year run here too, right? So, just getting involved with some of the community-based leaders here and some of the other guys that are involved in the original ownership and getting this team established. And I wasn't involved as some of the other guys that have been a part of it since probably 2010, trying to get a team here, but it took them a long time to get a team, and then just being able to be a part of that group that, was helping out with the establishment of the coaches and the staff and everybody involved and trying to put together the pieces to have a team and whatnot. And then the last 14 games in the last second season, they're just coming in and really trying to push this team into the playoffs. And, for a franchise that has made the playoffs 4 straight years as a team that had nothing, no draft, no pieces that were in place, the matter of, guys putting it all together and having a program from year 1, and then, obviously capping it off in year 4 with a championship. It's been, seems like a quick ride up the hill, but it's something that there was a lot of work going on before that happened.
Adam, as the captain of the squad, I mean, you got a taste with 1 game in that first year, and then you've been a mainstay and obviously wearing the C this year for a championship. What's it been like putting so much into a team and kind of being there as you guys grew to getting handed that trophy by the commissioner last week?
Yeah, I mean, it's been so special to, kind of be along for the ride, for all these 4 years, right? Like, I'm just so proud of the group, and we worked so hard all year. And I wish we could have done it for 3 years, but yeah, this group is so special, and yeah, I'm just gonna be happier.
Dwight, listen, it takes everyone, but tell us a little bit about Adam, his growth as a player, the role of a captain in leading a group of young men to your ultimate goal.
Yeah, it's easy to talk, great about Adam, because the first time I came in here, like I said, with those 14 games, he was kind of penciled in the lineup, out of the lineup, in of the lineup. And, I know my first 4 games were against probably the top 4 teams in the MJHL, and we were 0-4, and then we finished the last 10 games 7-3. And, the first 4 games, he was in, he was out. And there was some other assistant coach that said, well, that's just how we did it when I got here, when they were doing it. And I'm like, well, that's not how we're doing it now. I said, this kid doesn't come out of the lineup. And then he didn't come out of the lineup for that. And then we got into the playoffs and we got swept that first round, and getting back to last season, and then even coming into this season, the last 2 years of growth. And, coaching teams like we had this year isn't really as a coach, you kind of stand behind and be an observant of how things are ran, and you kind of put the standards out in front of it. And Adam really, he held the same standards that I had, pushed this group, and to do that, you got to have great leadership. And, it's the oldest saying in hockey, right? Good teams win, but great teams win championships with good leaders. So he's a big part of it.
Well, and it's one thing to win a championship, but it's another thing to really establish a new team, basically starting from scratch over 4 years. The 4 years that you've been coaching, but also being involved in it. I mean, from your perspective as a coach and a leader, how much do players like Adam and some of your veteran players that have contributed, how much are their fingerprints all over where this team is at and will be going into future seasons?
Yeah, and you know what, I think we're the only franchise in the MJHL too that has a dedicated head coach and a dedicated general manager. Most other teams are conjoined on the same role. So, Mike McCauley's been here since day 1 when Calvin Shack was here prior, and he's been here since, and a lot of the fingerprints are all over him too, right? He's the one that, found the talent that other people gave up. And, we have a whole roster of players here. Like I talked about before game 4 in Verdun, I was like, do this for your parents and do this for what you got to do, but also do it for yourself, for all the other teams that gave up on you and pushed you aside and said that you couldn't play here, couldn't play with us. And, we lead I think this year we led the NHL. I think we had 16 or 17 Manitoba-born players on a 25-man roster. So to have local talent and local people, it takes local leadership. And, Mike Mike and his scouting staff found that, right? And they got the pieces of the puzzle. And as a coach, it's just my job to put those pieces together and make it work. So,
Adam, as the captain, you go into this year after a couple of great individual seasons. You know the team is good. Was it a championship or bust right from the get-go this season with the team? And when you look back at this season, I mean, the incredible regular season you had, the playoff run, I mean, how will you look back at what you and your teammates were able to accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, coming to Niverville this year, you could just tell there was something different about the group. And yeah, it was pretty much championship or bust this year. You know, it was like, okay, we have the group to do it. I remember being in camp and I was like, holy smokes, you know, everybody's really good here. This is going to be a really good team. I just didn't really know how good we were going to be. You know, going 51, 6-1 in regular season and then dominating in playoffs. And, you know, it was really, really special. And yeah, but looking back on the year, it's pretty unbelievable. I came from the Interlake, and you know, Interlake sometimes doesn't win a whole lot, and you know, coming here and putting 51 wins in a 58 game schedule, it's pretty special.
Yeah, you mentioned with a name like Vigfusson, no one will be surprised that you're from Gimli. But you know, like, you know, for a kid like a local Manitoban, you get this opportunity. I mean, what was when you look back at your MJHL experience, in particular in Niverville, the way that you're supported by the fans, the billets, you know, it obviously ends phenomenally with a trip to nationals and an MJHL championship. But, you know, the player experience, how was it for you coming from Gimli and, you know, being a little far away from home, but, you know, kind of making it a second home?
Yeah, I mean, Niverville is my second home now. The MJ has provided me with such a awesome experience, and coming to a new team, there's definitely a lot of excitement in the air, and people are, you know, getting to know who you are, not only as a player, but as a person as well. And, you know, I go out in town and people talk to you, and it's a pretty special community. So, yeah, the experience altogether has been so awesome. Starting as an 18-year-old and kind of learning how to navigate, you know, junior, and being a good person on top of that and giving back to the community. That's what it's all about. So,
Dwight, the job isn't done. I'm sure you've let the guys have some fun for a couple days, but back at practice, because you guys are representing the MJHL at the Centennial Cup, and what an opportunity for you and the young men. You know, heading out east, PEI hosting it this year. Tell us a little bit about the next step for the Nighthawks, your preparation for the Centennial Cup, and what you hope to pull off for the MJ.
Yeah, you know, like Adam alluded to it earlier here, like we knew we had a group here, we knew we had a destination, and I knew deep down in my heart that this group was going to get it done. And, you know, I know a couple of my post-game interviews, there's some, you know, I laughed, there's some comments that, oh, he doesn't look happy. It's like, well, I'm not, you know what I mean? Like we won an MJHL championship and we're Turnbull Cup champions, but it's like, that's just part of the checklist that we have for this franchise program. So when we go to Summerside, we know that we're going to be representing the MJHL and Manitoba and general for all the people that supported us. And I truly believe that we have a team that can win a national championship there. And, you know, like going there, we're expected to, in our heads, we want to envision that we're going to win, right? Like we want to know that we're going to be there and we want to compete, but we want to win. And this group's been ranked number 2 in Canada out of 116 teams in November, and there's a team that's there number 1 ahead of us. So we know that they're on our radar too. So it's, we play them in the 4th game of the round robin. So it's going to be something that we got on our scope of what we got to do.
Adam, I mean, from your perspective as the captain, how are the boys feeling about the opportunity to represent the MJ and go for a national championship?
Oh man, it's really special. It's so cool, you know, and going to PEI, it's somewhere that I've never been, and pretty much all the guys really have been in the PEI. So it's going to be a really cool experience, and yeah, you know, we believe that we have what it takes to win a national championship, and just super excited to get started and get back to work here today, and yeah, work towards that goal.
Now, you know, listen, this will be the end of your season, but, you know, playing in the MJHL, giving you the opportunity to continue playing. Congratulations on the plans to go to York University. How will you look back at the your MJ experience, and how important was that opportunity in helping you continue, obviously, also in getting an education?
Yeah, I'm gonna look back on the MJ and tell everybody who's playing AAA or playing at a higher level, play junior. And if you're gonna play in the MJ. It's so much fun. It's such a special experience, and I'm gonna have lifelong friends and family members now, because I came to Niverville, and it's such a unique experience, and I'm never gonna forget these 3 years.
Dwight, before we go, fill us in on what the schedule is for the Nighthawks as you get ready to head out. The tournament begins on May the 7th. So what's the plan? What's the plan for the team over the next week or so? And how can fans kind of follow the Nighthawks when you're out east?
Yeah, so we got practice this week here, Monday to Saturday. Sunday we'll have a day off for the team for everybody to get their stuff together and get ready to go, and then we fly out next Monday, touch down in Halifax for the night, and then from Halifax the next morning we get bussed over by Hockey Canada over to Summerside, and then next Tuesday and Wednesday we'll have some prep time there, or practice Wednesday in Summerside, and then we kick off. Our first game is on the Thursday, May 7th, I believe. We play 7:30 at night in Summerside, which they're 2 hours ahead. It'll be 5:30 Manitoba time. We play the host team, so that rink holds about 3,800 people. So I'd imagine that building is going to be it's going to be packed and full of fans. So we get that real good experience in the first game, and then we play Saturday. It'll be a 12 o'clock local game, so it'll be 10 a.m. Manitoba time, and then we got a couple days to practice and maybe do a little sightseeing and a little bit of taking in of Summerside, and then we go back to back Tuesday, Wednesday, and then that's the end of the round robin. And then the end of the week should be depending how you place in your pools. If you're in the quarterfinal game or if you win your pool, you get a bye right to the semifinals on Saturday, and then the opportunity for is to play in the Sunday national championship game, which is broadcast on TSN as well, and it's going to be a nationally televised game. So that's our goal, is we want to play for a national championship there.
Well, we'll be pulling for you guys, and hopefully we'll see you guys coast to coast on TSN in that game. Adam, if you've got the host in the first game, we're going to have to go and damper the party a little bit and let them know the MJHL champs have arrived.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's gonna be a really fun atmosphere. That's for sure. I'm really looking forward to game one.
Listen, you guys, congratulations on an amazing season that is not over yet. But the first Turnbull Cup for the Niverville Nighthawks organization is a special one. The record speaks for itself. I think now, including the playoffs, 63-7-1. Keep it going, and hope there's a bunch more wins waiting for you out of the Centennial Cup. But congrats again, and thanks for joining us on Winnipeg Sports Talk. We'll look forward to following you guys over the next few weeks.
Okay, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
All right, congrats again to Dwight, Adam, and the Niverville Nighthawks, and good luck at the Centennial Cup. We'll stay on top of that as they begin their quest. And as I was saying, Remo, a good chance to kind of spoil the party there in PEI as they are playing the host team in the first round. And man, what a season. I mean, 63-7-1, a number 2 ranking in Canada. That's going to be a great opportunity to show folks that the MJHL has some pretty excellent hockey going on right now. So looking forward to that. All right. Listen, we'll get to the cool bet lines in a minute. Reem, one thing that we were going to talk about right off the hop, and then I think got a little sidetracked on these new CFL dates and playoff format, was the horrible news earlier today that Cheech, John Garrett, passed away.
Yeah, I was watching the game last night, and John and Harnryan Singh were doing the game, and I noticed Sportsnet was playing the ESPN broadcast, and I didn't think too much of it. I thought, maybe they wanted to, I don't, just for whatever reason they didn't do that. And I got the email this morning from NHL PR that he passed. I was driving, I was like, oh my God, crazy. That's very sudden, shocking. Was in Salt Lake City just doing games. Absolute broadcasting legend. And, you think of famous calls with John Garrett and the Winnipeg Jets. He called what was on the broadcast for the Dave Ellett goal in 1990, and also on the call for the Cole Perfetti game tying goal.
Which is amazing.
Yeah, which is amazing last year. And, they did such a great job last year, Ryan and John, doing the Jets series, and I loved when John would do Jets games on Hockey Night in Canada, this year or throughout the years. It was going to be fun, obviously, with the Canucks and nationally for so long. So an outpouring of love and support online for John in our chat, people coming in shocked. Like, he was just doing games on Friday. They did the first ever game for Utah. Very shocking.
Well, the thing I loved about John Garrett the most, especially as he got older, he did not give a bleep on anyone that may not have liked what he had to say. He was, I think, honestly, maybe the most authentic color guy in hockey. And I think you can only get to that point after being in the game for the 4 decades that he was in. But he would more so than any color commentator, he would shoot straight. He would not sugarcoat some things sometimes, including for the Canucks when he was doing Canuck games. Certainly took no prisoners and pulled no punches when he was doing it. And man, he had that dry sense of humor that I think we'll always remember. But what a big loss for the hockey community. It was just over a year ago, or under a year ago, that we lost Greg Millen. And another one of a long line of incredible former NHL goaltenders turned elite color commentators has left us. And we've seen the outpouring of grief from fans, but especially Remis, the guys that he rode with, our friends in the West Coast and the Vancouver media, certainly the Sportsnet team, everyone pretty devastated that the man they lovingly called Cheech has passed.
Yeah, Waiters in chat says the Solani hat-trick game against Vancouver in 93 playoffs. I still hear John's voice, and Ryan Singh putting out on social media, lost a gem of a human being. I was so lucky to have gotten to know John Garrett and enjoyed working with him so much. Made me feel so comfortable. Countless laughs and stories. Truly a great friend and beloved colleague to so many of us. Cheech, you will be missed dearly, and some nice photos of them. But man, that was a big surprise and very saddened to see that today.
The Randy Janda, who works at Sportsnet out in Vancouver, tweeted out that Chief took pride in updating his notes every night when he called Canucks games. He would watch highlights of every game that night and update his color-coded handwritten notes for each NHL team. But this is really cool. He also had a running list of the play-by-play broadcasters he worked with in his career. Now listen to some of these names.
Oh, I saw this.
Number 1, starting off with Don Whitman. Number 2, Calgary legend, and shout out Stampede Wrestling, Ed Whalen. Amongst others, Bob Cole, Jim Robson, Chris Cuthbert, Kurt Keelback, of course, who called the Winnipeg Jet games, Dick Irvin, Dan Kelly, Dennis Bayak, Steve Armitage, Peter Young, more Winnipeg content, Joe Bowen, Mark Lee, Darren Drager, Rod Black, Jim Hewson, Gene Principe. And then you get into Mike Toth, Brian Wild, Don Taylor, John Shorthouse, Labardius, RJ Broadhead, Rob Falls, Rick Ball, Paul Romanuk, Brendan Batchelor, and number 40 on that list, Harnarayan Singh. What an amazing career. By the way, this was from April of 2023, so there may be a couple of additions since Randit mentioned, but pretty darn cool, and a big loss for the Vancouver hockey scene and really for Canadian hockey fans. And as T. Will just said in chat, John Garrett ran a whole lot of Fs about 10 years ago. And that is true. All right, let's get to the cool bet lines for tonight. Pat will join us tomorrow. Jake will pop on Thursday as we get closer to the end of round 1 in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Remo, as I tweet out, I might have to unload responsibly on the Buffalo Sabres tonight because they're back at home in a clinching position, and the Blade Gang is going to be banging the drum before Game 5. Buffalo minus 167 favorites. Boston plus 141. And the Sabres puck line plus 150 on minus 1.5. You know me, I've been all up with Buffalo for a number of months now. What a weekend for them, and they can put the finishing touches on Boston, and dare I say, put them in a great spot for the next round. They can finish this off tonight and then let Tampa and Montreal beat the hell out of each other for another 2 or 3 games.
Yeah, and Boston, it did not go well for them last game. Jeremy Swayman going off the ice and scolding his team for their performance in front of him. How will they respond? You know, we've seen teams up with their back up against the wall this playoffs, like last night. Pittsburgh seemed like they were on their way out, but they won the 2 elimination games, so it's going to be tough in Buffalo. I mean, that is, you have to rank like atmospheres of this playoffs. Like, is Buffalo ahead of Montreal? I mean, those would probably be 1 and 2.
The top 3,
for me.
the top 3 are Montreal, Buffalo, and I think a clear 1 and 2.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, Utah was pretty damn close last night.
I was going to say Utah up there. They're fired up. It's funny, the Utah fans, they had never seen a home playoff loss. They didn't, it was their first ever overtime loss last night. They didn't know what it was like to go home late, absolutely devastated. Your team almost had this amazing comeback. But I agree. I think Montreal and Buffalo are the top 2 right now, and I think a home ice will be huge. Would like to see Buffalo move on, and we have had in chat, just naming some old Buffalo Sabres because it has been so long since they've been in the playoffs.
Minnesota, Dallas, Game 5 in Dallas, 7 o'clock. I mean, I can't say this is the series because this is going back to Minnesota one way or the other. But, man, does this feel like a huge opportunity for the Wild to build off their comeback in Game 4 and bring it back to Minnesota in a clinching situation. Minnesota, plus 110. Dallas, minus 130. What side of the ledger are you on in this one?
Yeah, that last game was so huge. Dallas needed to win that to have the advantage going back home because they are hurting. Roope Hintz, not in the game. He's not going to play Game 6. Said he might play Game 7, but sounds unlikely. But I think a huge loss for them is Lundqvist on defense, had a skate to the face, and that's huge for their defensive depth. Meanwhile, in Minnesota, Matt Zuccarello took the elbow from Tyler Myers early in the series, missed a couple games. He skated yesterday, skated today. He sounded like, they said he's a game-time decision, but sounds like he is going to be in the lineup. That's what Michael Russo from The Athletic projects. So I like Minnesota here. This is their chance. Dallas is really hurting, and Minnesota's got, they won before in Dallas. I think they can do it again.
Lindell, Heiskanen, Harley, Myers, Bighill, and it looks like Ilya Labushkin will be in for the Dallas Stars.
It's not a great third pair. That's not ideal.
I like that Bighill, though. He's a load. Big, strong guy. But again, that pushes Myers up, and expect a lot of ice time for Lindell and Heiskanen. Just put it that way tonight. I think I'm going to lean Minnesota in this one. And again, it's one of those emotional hedges. I'll be more than happy if they lose, but I think they win tonight and get a chance to move on. Minnesota plus 110, Dallas minus 30. And then the Ducks and the Oilers. And, dude, I didn't mention this right off the bat, but I just finished the lock shop in Edmonton as the news broke that Connor McDavid was nowhere to be seen at the morning skate. And I can't tell you that was making anybody in Edmonton feel any better. Oilers down to their last out at home. Does this one get back to Game 6, do you think?
I'm shocked that Anaheim is a plus 135 favorite, just how it's gone. I guess last game, did go to overtime and was won on a flukish goal, but it really depends if McDavid is in or out. I have no idea.
He'll play. He's got to play.
Based on how he looked in that third period, burning that rookie defenseman and skating, right by him, I think he's going to play, but what level can he do that? Even if you get one of those shifts, a period, it's unbelievable. Just skating past.
Crazy thing is, he didn't even play 20 minutes in the last game. Like in a game like that in normal, even in the regular season, a close game like that, McDavid's going to play 24-25. Now, they were also putting him out on PK, which was a little strange. I doubt that will happen. And by the way, if they could actually mix in a killed penalty, it might help them. I think the Anaheim power play is 8 for 13. Yeah, they're running at like 60% in the series.
And the other thing, too, for them, Dickinson, who they brought in at the trade deadline to be a big presence on the penalty kill, he's also a game-time decision. And they're missing, you're missing Henrique, McDavid and Draisaitl aren't 100%. Just so much playoff hockey here and big hockey for their big guys over the last 2 years has caught up to them. Caught up to Florida. I mean, Barkov was out, Kachuk's. But they got their 2 cups. What does Edmonton have? 2 cup losses.
2 trips to the final.
And now everyone's saying, well, McDavid is the same age that Crosby was after his 2nd cup. Is this it for McDavid, or does he get a late cup like Ovechkin?
It's not that late. I mean, for him to get to be, probably got another 6 years before he gets to how old Ovechkin was when he actually won it.
That's true. Well, is he going to get a cup with Edmonton? That's the other question as well. He's got 2 years left after this one, but they haven't exactly built a sustainable winner around him, I don't think. What's their goaltending?
The thing about that trade is that trade, they would, even if they just kept Skinner and it didn't work out this year, he could have walked. They've got Jari on the books for the next 2 years.
That's
that's basically the savings of the McDavid deal is given to Tristan Jari.
That's why that trade was so bad. First of all, it wasn't definitively an upgrade, which we said at the time. And yeah, you get out from Skinner, and then you could find someone. Did they really need to do that trade? Maybe Skinner wasn't, a top goalie, but he still took you to 2 cup finals.
Yeah.
I mean, what had Jari ever done? Put on waivers last year.
Buffalo, Minnesota, and Oilers. I'm riding with Edmonton tonight. I refuse to believe that they'll go out in 5 to the Anaheim Ducks on home ice, plus 447. If you want to put those together. We got Raptors tonight?
I
wait
haven't.
till tomorrow for that. No, Raptors game 5 is tomorrow. Cavs 8.5-point favorites at home. Raptors plus 300 to win their 3rd straight in the series and get this back to Jurassic Park with an opportunity to win. Cadillac Championship odds are up. Patty and I will hit those on the show tomorrow. Tonight in the NBA, Celtics 11-point favorites at home to the Sixers. The Knicks 6.5-point favorites at home to the Atlanta Hawks. Wemby and the Spurs 12-point favorites at home to the Blazers. And how about the Magic? This is tomorrow, Remo, but the Orlando Magic, who got in on the play-in, the 8th seed, have the 60-win 1-seed Pistons on the ropes, up 3-1 in their series.
Yeah, wow. When was the last time the Magic were relevant, Huss? So we'll see how this NBA plays out. Admittedly, I'm not paying too close attention. I'm dialed in on the NHL, baseball, regular season a little, but the NHL playoffs, I'm very captivated by. Very exciting first-round series. So although Pistons are, 10-point favorites.
Yeah, plus 198 on the Pistons to come back and still win the series. Orlando minus 20. And let's check in on the Jays tonight. Jays at home, minus 118 for Toronto, minus 104 for Toronto. Trey Savage gets, I believe that's his first start as a Blue Jay this year, going up against Peyton Tolle. Wasn't great at AAA for Savage in the warm-up, but let's hope he's ready to go and the Blue Jays can get a win. Great stuff today. Fun show. And Remo, of course, CFL draft tonight, and tomorrow we'll have Justin Dunk on. And originally we thought we'd just recap the draft. A ton of reaction from around Canada on what was announced earlier by the CFL. I mean, I think the earlier start's not controversial at all. Playoff format seems to be a hot topic right now on the old X machine.
Yeah, everyone's the hot takes are certainly flying about the playoffs, and I saw like Matthew Wannock from Edmonton Sports Talk and Derek Taylor saying, okay, these teams would be in the playoffs in 2024. You have a 5-13 and a 7-11 team in the playoffs. Like, this is dumb. Having 8 of 9 teams in the playoffs. I don't think it's. I think it kind of cheapens the regular season. I did enjoy the tweet from Jeff Hamilton, co-host with you on CFL 110. I don't know if you need to fire up an emergency episode for this, but he said, his tweet was, the league should force the 9th place team to drink chocolate milk until they puke as punishment for not making the playoffs. You can dress it up, but having 8 of 9 teams make the playoffs instantly loses credibility. This is purely to generate revenue. Hopefully it works. I agree with Jeff. They should have to do a punishment if you don't make it in a 9-team league.
Yeah, a group ritual humiliation at halftime of the Grey Cup.
Yeah. That would be amazing. Every year you'd have that booked. You don't have to worry about
halftime show. You bring out whatever the act is, and then when they're finished, everyone collectively laughs at the 9th place team in the league that didn't even make it into the play-in round of the CFL. Tomorrow, Dunk will be on. We'll get his thoughts. I mean, more reaction from around the league, as well as the draft that goes tonight. Again, good luck to the Bombers, as well as Mr. Vaccaro from Winnipeg and the University of Manitoba via Purdue. Would not mind at all to hear the Blue Bombers select him tonight in the draft and get him into the mix. I wouldn't be surprised if they're looking at the offensive line with that first pick. Thanks to Adam Vigfusson, as well as Coach Hirst with the Niverville Nighthawks, Adam Bighill, Murata Tesh, and if you joined us late, great NHL draft talk with Chris Peters from earlier today. Tune in tomorrow. Dom DiVincentis is going to join us. We'll have Moose players on throughout the week as we get closer to the weekend with the playoff games on the at 2 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday. And we will have your chance to win tickets for the games. And what will actually be great is we're going to do it with a code so that if you win a pair and you'd like to bring the entire family, you can select the seats and get additionals right next to them. So we'll roll all that out tomorrow. But Dom DiVincentis on the show, Mike McIntyre, Justin Dunk. It will be a beauty. Make sure to join us tomorrow at 1 o'clock. We'll recap the CFL draft. Tonight in the National Hockey League playoffs, get ready for the Moose and much more. That is tomorrow. Thanks so much to all the sponsors that make our program happen each and every day, and all of you for checking in on podcast or on YouTube. Have yourself a great night. Enjoy the CFL draft, and we will see you tomorrow, 1 p.m. right here on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.